Welcome to today's episode. So, if you're new here, basically what we do on this segment here is that we will discuss some games in my Relay of Gaming little segment that I have, where we'll pick three games at random and discuss them in as much as I can. Whether if it's a game that I've already played, I'll give a little mini review on it, or if it's a game I'm not too familiar with it, I'll give some thoughts on the likelihood that I'll maybe finally scratch it off the backlog at some point. So it's just mainly for fun. And then eventually I'll put up some YouTube short videos on my YouTube channel, so Arcade Amigo. And then we'll get into a little bit of modern gaming news. And so this is more just a casual discussion as far as what's going on in these current times in video games. But I do try to keep up as much as I can with some of the news that's going on and all, but not the most tech savvy person or also up to date on everything that's going on. So again, it's just kind of more of a casual conversation. Think of it almost as if you're just having a conversation with a, buddy of yours that's into gaming, but, not completely hardcore into every single little thing that's going on, as I do consider myself quite the nerd, but unfortunately I just don't have the time to really keep up with everything. But I do the best that I can to at least keep you informed as much as I can on it. And again, just to have a discussion. But then after that, I get into the more meat of what I'm doing with this podcast here, which is going over something video game related as far as the history of video games, or eventually I'll probably be doing some retrospective on game series or even the game companies and all. But right now I've been going through the years in gaming, and we started at 1980, and we will be discussing the year 2004 today. And so this year brought a lot of great stuff to the video game industry, and so excited to start talking about it. As for me, it's up there with one of the best years in gaming. But before we get into all that, let's go over here for our Relay of Gaming segment here. So we got three games we're going to choose from. So basically what I do is I have an Excel sheet on my phone that I've just been adding some games to, and a number generator that I just randomize a number, and then whatever number it picks, I'll pick that game from the list, and we'll have a little discussion on it here. So let's get into it here. Let's see. And don't have my little relay sound effect here, but that's all right. We'll make it work still. So 585 is what I got here. All right, so I got Gran Turismo 7. So that'll be a fun one. I just got a little idea what I want to do for the little video that I might want to do on this here, so that'll be fun. All right, let's see. But let's go with the next one here. 1432. All right, let's see what this brings. All right, let's see here. Oh, very nice. Okay, so this is a game that just came out recently. So that is Terminator 2D No Fate. Okay, so that is cool. That's a great game. Okay, and for the third pick here, 683. All right, and let's see what this game is here for 683. This is for Jumping Flash. Okay. All right, so quite the varied choice there as always. So let's start talking a bit about these games here. And so starting with Gran Turismo 7. So this is the entry that we got here on the PlayStation 5, but it's also cross-gen with the PlayStation 4 generation as well too. And so I've talked about it a bit already before in previous podcasts, but I like the Gran Turismo games. I think I can definitely appreciate them for what they are, as far as being a very tactical racer, and just has a lot of stuff that you can dive into, right? If you're really someone that's into cars, as the way you can customize your vehicles, it's truly amazing. And then all the different real life vehicles that you can select from, and just a very realistic graphics and the handling of the vehicles and all. I mean, this game, Gran Turismo, became quite a legendary title when it comes to racing simulation games. I mean, so much so that there was even a true life scenario that happened involving someone that was he was pretty hardcore into playing Gran Turismo, and he ended up becoming a professional racer. There was actually a movie that was made about it that came out a few years ago, which is actually a pretty decent movie too. But the story itself is actually really excellent, and just to kind of show you the wide range of influence that this game had amongst a lot of people. And so I generally like my racing games a little bit more on the, I guess on the more arcadey side, but I still have fun with this one. And what makes this one really fun for me too also is that the way I have to play it now is not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before that. My wife got me this whole wheel set up and all that, and it has like this platform on it, and where you has like the gas pedals and the brakes and all, and it makes it really fun to play Gran Turismo this way, and actually my preferred way of playing it, and just makes for a lot of fun. And it's actually gotten me into the game more. So where before I used to like the Gran Turismo games to an extent, but playing it with this Hori, it's like I think it's from Hori. It just makes it so much more fun. And although I'm not like a professional player by no means, but I still like going in there and picking out a nice little car and then just taking it out for a drive. Since I can't afford one of these really fancy cars, but at the very least I can ride them in this Gran Turismo game. But yeah, I mean, as far as Gran Turismo's games go, it's pretty excellent. There was, I haven't gotten too deep into it, but I know there was some controversy with some updates that they made where it just seems like that the way you can grind for credits in the game and all became more difficult, probably prompting them for, I don't know for sure, but maybe like loot boxes or so. So, the usual modern gaming stuff. Not 100% sure on that. I just remember that there was some controversy with it. But either way, for what it is, though, it's definitely a well-designed game, and as most Gran Turismo games have been, and definitely, if you're into racing simulations, right, this one's definitely worth getting. But then for the next one here, so this is a brand new game, and it's for Terminator 2D: No Fate. And so this game was announced, I don't know, maybe was it early last year, or was it even in 2024? I don't remember, but when they announced this game, though, I was immediately very excited to play it. I'm a big fan of Terminator 2, the movie, well, parts 1 and 2, and this definitely felt like the game that we should have got back in the day during probably the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo days. It's a running gun shooter, and you play throughout some events from the movie, but also it adds some new scenarios, like just a few extra stages where you play Sarah Connor that expands more on the overall Terminator 2 story, along with some futuristic scenarios where you play as John Connor, and then also you control the T-800 at certain points, and just ultimately a very fun running gun shooter where it's kind of it takes a lot of inspiration from Contra, but that's a good thing though. And just a lot of fun, and the action is very fast paced. The controls are very tight, and just a lot of fun to play through. I mean, the game is, it's definitely it's a great nostalgic trip to take if you had any fascination with the movies, but even if you don't, I mean, it's just a great running gun shooter. But if you are a fan of the movies, I think you'll get more out of it because, for example, like the soundtrack is spot on, where it has original music, which is very well done. And it also uses some of the music from the movie, which the composer who did that, Brad Fidel, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. And so they use his music and do some remixes of it, and just sounds really outstanding, and definitely brings that feeling of watching the movie again. And again, I mean, the game, it's definitely the game we should have gone back then. But not only that, though, it also feels very much like a sequel to another kind of underappreciated game, which was the Terminator on the Sega CD. And that was kind of the same thing where it's a running gun shooter, and something about this game sort of felt like that one there. It was sort of like an evolution of it. But the pixel art is amazing in this one. Definitely captures the feel of the movie, and also like old school 2D shooters. And just definitely, they did a really good job of recreating a lot of the big set piece moments from the movie. And Yeah, I mean, I had a blast playing this game, but it's not long though, and that's the thing, right? That I guess for me personally, it's not too much of a knock, as I don't mind short games as long as that they are very fun to play. But that can be a lot for some, right? For its asking price, which I think the digital version is $30, and the physical, I want to say it's $60. But for me personally, it was definitely worth it just because I'm such a big fan of the movie, and again, I'm just looking for a shorter, really fun game to play. One of my more favorite games of last year, and the just the overall the I mean, it definitely felt like a game that was made for of by fans of the not only of video games but also of the movie, and really wanted to give you an experience of playing that at home, and just made for a really good time. And Terminator 2D No Fate, just love it a lot, and so glad we got this game, even if it took, what, Terminator Terminator 2 came out, what, 1992, I think, in the theaters, 1991. So it's been a lot of years in the making, but, we finally got it. And so, it was definitely worth it. But then the next one that I had was Jumping Flash. And I don't have too much information on this one. I've messed around with this game a bit. I think I've beaten like the first level once or twice, as mainly just to check out the game, but not something that I've gotten really deep into. And for many people, though, this might have been like their first 3D platformer ever, as I don't think it was like the very first, technically the first 3D platformer. But I want to say it was probably the one that has some kind of like market relevance though. And this game came out, let's see, I believe it was in both in Japan and North America around 1995 or so. I just know that it was an early game for the North American launch for the original PlayStation. And so, what I understand of the game, you play some kind of like this mechanical rabbit of some sort, but it's all through like a first person perspective. And the jumping in it is actually pretty well done, as it kind of does what the Metroid Prime games do, where it gives a bit of like weight to your character that makes the platforming just feel more natural and more responsive. As sometimes platforming in 3D, it can feel a little floaty, and where like you feel like you're not connected to the platforms, if that makes any sense. But this one does a pretty good job of that, and a lot of it has to do with sort of like when you jump, the camera tilts a little bit down, so you can kind of see where you're landing, and that little subtle animation there gives it some heft to it, right, when you're doing the platforming. And so it seems fun what I've played of it. It seems a little kind of a bit of a quirky game, but at the very least, right, it's interesting to check out just so you can get an idea of where 3D platformers were starting to get their start at. And this is definitely an early one here, but I know you can shoot some lasers too as well to, against some enemies that come after you. But it's a interesting little game, and I know it had a sequel that came out afterwards at some point. But yeah, I mean, before there was Mario 64, we had Jumping Flash. Well, anybody that wanted to give this game a chance and had the PlayStation back in 1995, anyways. But that's what I got for these three games here. And so again, I'll be trying to capture some footage for these and putting them up on the YouTube Shorts here throughout the week. But let's get now into some modern gaming stuff here. And well, there's quite a bit of stuff here actually that ended up happening. So I'll try to go over it as much as I can. A lot of these stories I didn't fully get too engaged in as far as what exactly is going on. So some of this will just be sort of just quick little bullet points on them. But some interesting stuff though that's happening, both I guess good and bad, I guess, depending on your perspective. But first and foremost, I'll start off with Final Fantasy VII. So I have a feeling, okay? Now, last year I was predicting that we wouldn't get any kind of announcement of some sort on the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. I just felt it was too soon. There was some hype that it might have been revealed at the Game Awards and all, at least a title, but I don't know, it just felt all too soon. And so ultimately, we never got any word of that. But we have gotten some more information though here recently. So Naoki Hamaguchi, So he's been the director of the Final Fantasy Rebirth, and I believe he was involved in Remake as well. And he's been with Square Enix, from my understanding, for a while, or at least developing video games to some extent. But he's been doing the rounds, doing some interviews, and so he's provided some actual information. So this is coming straight from him, so not rumors and leaks and all. And so it's been some more information that we've gotten fairly recently, or on this. And so he did confirm that the name is that they did finalize the name for what it's going to be called. Apparently, he said something about that they went to a Paris weekly show or something like that, and that when they came back, they were to finalize the name, and the final decision had to be made by Nomura. And so, looks like when they came back from this trip or something like that, they locked in the name, whatever it is, right? They haven't announced it yet, but they got the name locked in. He did also unveil, and now this is something that's been pretty much known before, but because I think he announced it, like, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, that the game is in a playable state. It just needs to be polished. And so, the whole polishing and all of that, takes a while. And, but otherwise, yeah, it's pretty much in a playable form. And so they also confirmed that the game will be running on the Unreal Engine 4. There's been a bit of a, sigh of relief with that, but also a bit of disappointment, as there was a speculation that it might end up getting moved to Unreal Engine 5. But ultimately, I guess you can go about it a few different ways, but I personally am okay with it because, I mean, the graphics like, I'm looking at Remake and Rebirth, and they look outstanding, right? I really feel that these games you look at these games and they're amongst the more top tier looking games, that's been made. And granted, they have some good graphical glitches here and there, right? I mean, that's just kind of, I guess, par for the course nowadays on a big, expansive world that you're creating. But for the most part, I mean, they look amazing, right? I feel like not only the art style and all, but just the actual technical prowess of the everything that they created looks pretty impressive. And so I think for that it's, I'm fine with it if they continue with Unreal Engine 4. I mean, in Unreal Engine 5, they probably could have done a few more things, but, I guess a few things with that, though, is that first and foremost, right, and all that's them jumping over to a new engine, and I don't know anything about game development, but I can only imagine that would have prolonged things even further. And also, too, I say this just from what I've seen and from a lot of feedback that's been coming out, but there seems to be issues with optimizing games on the Unreal Engine 5. And I don't know to what extent that might be because, if it's just more difficult or it just doesn't, correspond well with a lot of the consoles and PCs that are out there, because it seems to be an issue just across the board. So I don't know if I would have wanted that right in the last installment of the Final Fantasy game. And so I think it's just best that they stuck to the Unreal Engine 4 and, what's already tried and true. And it sounds like they've ironed out some of the kinks with that engine there, right? That they've built in like systems, I would assume, to help them overcome maybe obstacles that they might have using that engine. But I guess if there is a bit of a concern with them using that engine is I think about what's left to cover in this game, and there's a lot. If you have any understanding of Final Fantasy VII, the game, and you know what happened at the end of Rebirth, but then know what comes after that, at least in the original game, there's a lot of ground to cover still. And not only that, there's a lot of big moments. And so I guess there is a bit of a concern. Are they going to be able to do all that in Unreal Engine 4? I have confidence that they will, that it'll be a very comparable ultimate vision, right, on what they are, and then, and making it into a video game. And but I guess that is a bit of a concern there, because I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of major big things that happen. And so hopefully, they'll be able to, I guess, I'm assuming, I mean, it sounds like the game's already finished, right? So it sounds like they were able to figure it out, and just hopefully, the end product that we get will be pretty amazing. And I feel like it will, but, we'll see though. But yeah, but that's all kind of exciting news. So I get the feeling, right? Because the Final Fantasy VII Remake came out on the Switch 2 and on the Xbox recently, which is cool. And I'll give a quick thought here on the Switch 2 version. But the anniversary of the Japanese release is next Saturday on the 31st. It's the 29th anniversary, so a bit of an odd number, but I don't know. I get the feeling like it's any time now. I feel that there's going to be some kind of like an official visual reveal of this game, even if it's something as simple as just the title reveal, right, with the logo, something as simple as that, with like a very teaser trailer of some sort that only gives really quick static images or something to that effect. I feel like it's right around the corner because I don't feel we'll get like a full blown trailer until maybe towards the summer or so, and I'm still betting that the game will be released sometime in the springtime of 2027. But I think it's getting close to that time where they could be revealing something. It still feels a little early, and but now that the remake is out on the both on the Xbox and PlayStation 2, or I'm sorry, on the Switch 2. I mean, maybe they want to give it a bit of breathing room, right, to let people go through the game, play the game, and and granted, I mean, Rebirth is still that hasn't come out yet, but on the other systems, anyways. But I don't know. I feel like something's in the air that something can get released. So I'm getting myself pretty excited about it. So looking forward to hopefully we might get some kind of announcement of some sort by next, sometime late next week. Again, if I'm a betting man, I'm probably going to lean 40 no, 40% yes, 60% no. That's something will get revealed, but we'll see. But it's definitely a lot more. The odds are better than what I felt it was before, and something this year is going to get announced on it, right? And so yeah, that all has me pretty excited. And speaking of things that are kind of getting leaked or sort of announced, so there's this dude Nate the Hay, who he seems to be a very reliable and trusted leaker. And so it looks like on some kind of a social media thread of some sort, someone had asked him about Rebirth coming out to the Xbox in 2026. And so he responded, yes. Uh, um, and then also was asked like if that's also the same thing for the Switch too, something like that. And so he responded yes too, basically alluding that from what it sounds like from his knowledge is that Rebirth should be coming out to the Xbox and the Switch too, sometime this year. Which, I mean, it seems a little weird, right? Because we just got remake, but I feel like they want to get these games out possibly to, if they don't come out all at the same time for the Final Fantasy 3 remake one, that they won't be too far off. And because I think people that are getting to play the game now on the Switch 2 and the Xbox that are going to be, people that become fans of it, they really want to get their claws in on the third one as soon as possible, right? So I don't know, maybe they'll do a simultaneous release, but we shall see. But all pretty exciting. I'm very excited about it and should be right around the corner. And just quick thoughts on the Switch 2. So I did get it there, and well, the Switch 2 version. And basically, it just comes down to how much are you willing to compromise, or if it's even that big of a deal. Long story short, the Switch 2 version is a perfectly playable version. So if you've never had the other versions and you basically have stuck to Nintendo, you're getting a really excellent version. And if you've stuck with Nintendo up to this point, you are probably going to be more willing to put up with compromises in graphics and such than maybe some other people, because the Nintendo systems more recently have been underpowered compared to the Xbox or PlayStation or PC. But I mean, from what I can tell, what I played of it, and I've only gotten to like chapter 2, it looks really great. The resolution looks nice. However, they're doing it with DLSS or whatever, it looks pretty crisp and it runs smooth at 30 frames per second, but it's a smooth 30 frames per second. And I say that, and again, I don't know the exact technicalities of it, but I remember playing Rebirth on graphics mode, and just because I couldn't stand like the resolution on the performance mode, and even in graphics mode, though, well, yes, it looked sharp, but the frame rate just seemed like it was really jittery. And so when I played on the Switch 2, though, and so talking about like the dock version, it looks pretty good. I mean, it's 30 frames per second, but basically it's like what, more or less, right, with graphical improvements here or there, or maybe not as good as the PlayStation 4 version. Again, give or take, right? So if you were able to enjoy the game if you first played it back then, and again, you don't need to have the bells and whistles of 60 frames per second and all, then you'd be perfectly serviced with this version here. Some downsides is that, Cloud's hair does look a little dithered, especially in the handheld mode, but, it's not bad. It's I can tolerate it. And it's but the other big one though is that it's a pretty huge file size, where we're already kind of used to that on the Xbox and the PlayStation, but on the Switch, ooh, dang! I ended up shelling out to get a 1 terabyte micro SD card on for micro express SD card on the Switch 2, and just because I'm like, okay, this is going to start eating up my memory quite a bit. And I was lucky enough to find one, and so yeah, it's you're gonna need some memory for this one, because even if you're just going off of like the internal system, it eats up quite a bit of a chunk of it, because it's like, I think it's like close to 91 gigabytes for the file size, and the internal memory on the Switch 2 is what, 256. So it takes up a good chunk. So just be prepared for that. And then of course there's a whole game key card thing, and again, we've talked about that already, but that, well, it is what it is, right? But either way, all exciting stuff. All right, but let's get away from Final Fantasy VII though for a bit, and just a few little quick things that came out recently. Is so there's this 2D Metroidvania game that seems to be kind of a cross between Castlevania and Bloodborne, but it's the Last Faith. And I had my eye on this game for a while now. It just seemed like something that would be pretty cool, but just never have really gone too much into it as far as what it's all about. I just like the art style of it, and all look pretty cool. But it's a 2D Metroidvania game, and from what I've seen I just saw a few quick reviews on it, and people seem to, for the most part, enjoy it. But it did get some free DLC, so there you are, right? If you've owned the game and really enjoy it, then there's some free DLC out there you can get into, and so that's pretty cool when video game companies can do that nowadays. But speaking of that, Nintendo just also out of nowhere for Donkey Kong Country Returns HD got a free update as well too. And so this kind of came out of the blues, and which was cool because that version there was heavily criticized because it was visually a bit inferior to the Wii version in some aspects. And also there was just there was a lot of things about it that just didn't feel like the most comparable port, and for the price that they were asking. But they did an update on it for free. It's already out. And so I don't know the full extent of the update. I just think it adds a few new modes, and then it lets you play as Dixie Kong, and also adds fur textures to Donkey Kong at least. And then also on the Switch 2 version, it ups the resolution and the I don't think the performance, but it basically ups up the resolution on it. So yeah, so that's cool. So people seem to be pretty excited about that. That now it seems to be the more better way to play that game. As again, people were a bit upset about when it first came out, but I never really got to play the Wii version, so I did get Donkey Kong Country Returns, and when I played, I was like, "Yeah, it looks good, right?" And I was happy enough with it. But again, I'm coming from someone that didn't get to play the Wii version, but then afterwards, I saw like comparison videos. I was like, "Oh yeah, there in certain areas there was a bit of a downgrade, which is kind of a bummer, but also just kind of par for the course with a lot of this stuff." But at the very least, they did come back and do this free update on it that improves on some aspects of the game. Let's see, but we got some rumors. So this here, it feels like something's in the air on this too. There's been enough rumors out there that it seems like this could be true, and something that we could be getting the information on soon, and that is for remakes of 2 Resident Evil games. And one is for Resident Evil 5, and the other one for Resident Evil Code Veronica. And we're supposed to get some kind of a reveal sometime this year, is from what it sounds like, possibly next month. And so, I mean, I think that's already kind of expected. It seems like that's what Capcom's been going back and doing. They really love their RE engine. They really do. And I don't blame them. I think it's a really great engine. In some cases, the characters can look a little plasticky in a way, but I still feel it's a really great engine. And apparently it's been helping them to pump out a lot of these games and, pretty decent turnaround time. So I don't hate this news. I think it's pretty cool. Code Veronica is the one that I would probably want to see remade more, because I like the game, and I talked about it actually fairly recently. I did like my top 10 games on the Dreamcast, and I had that game on there, and I do like the game. I think it's a good Resident Evil game of like the old school style, where you get the tank controls and the fixed camera angles. There's just some parts of it that is just pretty cheesy and cringe. And part of that, for me, the one main thing that I have about this game that it just kind of I have to sort of stomach if I'm going to play the game again is just the character of Steve. I'm usually not put off by like characters that are a little annoying. I'm like usually I can whatever. But Steve, he is one he annoys me when I play that Resident Evil game. And then to a certain extent, the Alfred character too, he's kind of annoying too. But Alfred, I could take him or leave him, right? But Steve does. I'll admit, he annoys me. He just does. But other than that, I really like the game though. So I don't know. Maybe they can make Steve cool in this one if they do a remake. That'd be my main thing. It's just like, okay, do whatever you want in it. Just make a cool remake. Cool. Just please fix Steve. Um, but or maybe double down and on his cheesiness. Hell, I don't know. But either way, that'll be interesting. Resident Evil 5, I mean, does it need a remake? I guess. I don't know. I don't think it does. But I guess if they're, going all out right on remaking these games, then well, that's the next one in the in the lineup. I mean, they could go back and redo Resident Evil 1 too, but I don't know. It's like, do I like that they're doing these remakes and all? Nah, I mean, they're cool. I'll admit I do really enjoy the Resident Evil remakes, but it's something that I didn't need to have necessarily. Like, I really enjoy Resident Evil 4 remake. I thought that was an excellent new vision of that game. But I could have also done without it, because Resident Evil 4, the original one for me, holds up incredibly well still. So, I mean, I guess, I mean, it is what it is, right? We're getting remakes off the wazoo now. So I just said off the wazoo. But, I guess at the end of the day, it's if you're going to make a remake, cool. But just keep giving us access to the old versions, though. Still, I guess it's the happy medium with that. But yeah, we are also getting Resident Evil 9 Requiem next month, so I'm a little hyped for that game. So we'll see how that turns out. Let's see. But another thing though that happened that was kind of major though is so Ubisoft apparently went through some rough times here recently. So what I understand of it, I didn't. This is one of the stories that I just kind of saw a quick video on it, but it's looks like so they announced some things, and so that was that the Prince of Persia remake. So the Sands of Time that they were doing, it ended up getting canceled, which I felt it was going to. I didn't really have too high hopes for that one, and I don't know. I really enjoyed the original one. It's actually a really great game. So I wasn't quite sure how I was feeling about a remake of it. I was like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's not something I was really hyped for. For me, I'm perfectly good with just keeping the original one around. But yeah, sure enough, it ended up getting canceled. And for me personally, I didn't feel like I was surprising. But then Assassin's Creed Black Flag, the remake, I guess that was supposed to come out. Well, it looks like it got delayed. Excuse me. And then amongst some other stuff too, they had some mass layoffs apparently too, and so yeah, Ubisoft doesn't seem to be doing that well, and which is kind of a shame. I mean, they had some excellent games throughout the 2000s, and then in the early to mid 2010s, and so it's kind of unfortunate that this is happening to them, but time marches on and things change, and what was the old guards back in the day, things have changed now and it's just different now, right? But on the plus side of that, we do get some cool new developers, right? Like Team Cherry or Sandfall Interactive. But it just seems like a lot of our old developers that just seem to be old faithfuls back in the day. It's just not the same anymore. But yeah, it looks like they took some hits though. So, I don't really have much that I'm interested in that they might be coming out with. I think they're doing a Rayman game of some sort, which could be interesting. But other than that, I just not, I mean, it sucks for, that all these employers lost their jobs, right? I mean, that's always horrible. But at the same time, I mean, they just haven't really been doing a whole lot. Well, the company, Ubisoft, as far as output of games have been releasing that, I don't know, for me, there just hasn't been really anything from Ubisoft that has come out within the past, God, I almost want to say almost a decade now that I just haven't really had too much interest. But yeah, that's what's going on with them though. But speaking of Ubisoft though, so kind of related is so this whole PSSR 2.0 that is this update that is coming out for PlayStation 5 Pro users. That's supposed to come out sometime between what I say last week, January through March. There might be more to it. It is possible that it might be able to upscale some PlayStation 4 games. And some of the games that, if I understand this right, that got announced for this was Ubisoft games. So things like a lot of the Assassin's Creeds and Far Cry games. So like they're getting some kind of a patch that supposedly they run now at 60 frames per second, something to that effect. So that'll be interesting to see when I guess this all officially gets announced or when it gets released. So, I already mentioned it last time, but a bit annoying, right, that it had to take this long, but it would be cool though if hopefully this update, ends up fulfilling the promise that the PSR was promising from the start, or not the PS5 Pro. I mean, sorry, but we will see, I guess. But then so there's been a lot of like back and forth, and again, this is just one of those things where sometimes having too much information out there can be a good thing, but sometimes a bad thing too. And so I was seeing a lot about how Nintendo supposedly is losing a lot of money and that their Switch 2 is, it's starting to go on a downward spiral and that it's the next Wii U and all kinds of stuff. But then I saw another video like almost the next day, and this was just recently. That's still kind of an ongoing story, but it seems like that's actually not the case, maybe. So from this Matt, what's his name? Matt Piscatella guy. So he seems to do a lot of statistics for the video game industry and maybe other things. But according to him, so the Switch 2 was the first system to sell 4.4 million units in the US in the first 7 months. It's currently 35% ahead of what the PS4 did during the same time frame and nearly double of the Switch. So what's going on, right? Is it really doing good? Is it not doing good? Like most things, it's probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, it is expected that Nintendo, well, not just Nintendo, but probably a lot of other electronics, really, that there's going to be some kind of a price increase, again, due to the whole RAM shortages that we got going on. So we'll see how ultimately, I mean, at this point, we don't really know how the Switch 2 is going to do. I mean, 4.4 million units within the first 7 months is not something to just, you know, frown upon. I mean, that's a lot, right? But I guess a lot of it just has to do is like how much is it, how well is it doing now though? Was it just that the system just sold really quick right away and then it's going to die out? Well, it kind of made it seem like it had a really good December though. So we talked previously that it didn't have a very good November, but it did have a really good December. So at this point, I'm not sure. And like I said, I haven't really done too much of a deep dive on each of these stories. It's just some things that I saw across the internet and so on both stories there. So I'm not entirely sure, I guess, where exactly we're at with all this, but I would probably say it's somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, they definitely sold a lot of units, but maybe Nintendo is kind of hurting right now, though, as far as, going forward on how many units it's going to sell. But I do think that like Final Fantasy VII, from what I last read, it seems like it was topping a lot of like eShops for the best-selling games in a lot of different regions. So that might give the Switch 2 a bit of a boost. And with other games, like Resident Evil 9, I'm sure that'll help out as well. Because again, we're getting some top-notch AAA budget games on the Nintendo Switch right alongside almost when the games are coming out for like the Xbox and the PlayStation and the PC. So that could be very appealing, right, for a lot of the Switch user install base. So we'll see. I'm interested in seeing how the Switch 2 does. Because for me personally, I enjoyed the system. I'm really having a good time with the Switch 2. I've been playing it quite a bit, and a lot of it is. I mean, admittedly, I haven't been really playing too much like Switch 2 content because there's just not a whole lot out there. But I really enjoyed Donkey Kong Bonanza. It's not the best 3D platformer, but it's a really fine one. I mean, I've been playing Mario Kart World a bit with my kids, and we have fun with that. But again, for me personally, even if it was the best Mario Kart game ever, Mario Kart games for me aren't necessarily what I'm getting the system for. And, now with Final Fantasy VII, on the Switch 2, I'm curious to go through that game there, right? And to be able to play it portably without having to rely on the internet. That was a big selling factor for me there. And we'll see, right? I feel like where Nintendo could really amp up, well, up the ante. Is that? Oh my god, what am I trying to say? Up the ante. That's a phrase, right? Sure. Is if they announce there's some kind of an announcement on a big Zelda game and a big Mario game of some sort. I mean, for Zelda, we just recently had Echoes of Wisdom, and then Tears of the Kingdom wasn't too far past. Well, I mean, it's almost going to be three. Geez, it's almost going to be 3 years now, actually. Oh, geez, God, time's going by fast. But well, but I would say, like, if they announce, like, I mean, there's a lot of rumors again, right, that we might get some kind of an Ocarina of Time remake. That would be a big announcement there. And if we get some indication of when the next 3D Mario game is going to come out, I think that'll give him a big boost. But we'll see. I really enjoyed the system, even though understanding, right, that it's, heavily, favoring into doing digital games instead of physical games. Understanding all that. But for the system itself and all the experience on it as of right now, I'm having fun with it. I enjoy it. And I do plan on continuing using it for quite a while. Again, the whole hybrid nature of it and all, it's a game changer for me and really has made me appreciate video games more, just being able to buy games that way. And then just kind of finishing off here. So we had an Xbox Direct, and so I didn't get a watch the full Direct. I did see one video though that made just some observations on what was released during this Direct. And so it looks like they mainly showed off Forza Horizon 6, which got a release date, and I think it's in May of this year, I think. And from what I understand, it's going to come out first on the Xbox, and then I think PC, and then a little bit later on the PlayStation 5, I think. But it's set in Japan. It looks cool. I love those that racing game series. So yeah, I'm excited for that one. Um, and then also this game called Beast of Reincarnation. So this is the game that they announced a little while ago that was being made by Game Freak, I think is the name of the developer. So that's the company behind that does the Pokemon games. Looks interesting. A lot of these games that are coming out from China, well, actually, I don't even know. Are they from China? Or either way, but they look kind of similar, like this one. The Wulong game, I think that's what it's called. And then also there's been several games that have a similar style and all. And I mean, I'm all for, I love like the whole like samurai, warrior kind of characters and setting and all. I think that's cool, but there seems to be a lot of them coming out that it's almost kind of like, okay, are we overdoing this now? But I don't know. It looks interesting, but I guess I have to see more of it to see really if it's something that I would really want to check out. But then also the one that was seeming to get a lot of hype around it though was Fable, which was interesting because that game did not get a whole lot of positive reception when it was first revealed. But whatever they showed on this new Xbox Directs, it seems like it's been turning some heads and seems to be a lot more interesting than what it initially seemed. And so we'll see what it's all about. But it looks like it's still kind of doing the same of what previous um, previous Fable games have done, but just expanding on it more. Like I said, saw something like about you can buy like pretty much any house and romance every NPC and all, which I don't know. I mean, that is like at that point, it seems like it's becoming almost like a Sims game. But Fable, I did enjoy the first one on the Xbox. That's the one that I did get into. I beat that game and I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty cool, but it wasn't like one of my favorite games of all time or anything like that. But it was fun. And then I played I think a bit of part two, and I never really touched the other ones. So my hype for this one is not too much, but for people that really like Fable, I mean, they seem to be happy about it, so that's cool. And I guess if anything, just hopefully it's a good game for just for people that are fans of that series there. But let's now start getting into the year of 2004 and what that brought for video games. This is an excellent year. I really did enjoy this year. And when I look back on just a lot of the games that came out, this was just another good example, right, of what this generation was all about. And a lot of the games, kind of like last year, that were really some of the more standouts. It was just a lot of cool games that were on all the platforms, or at least more than one. And then each system too has some pretty cool exclusives as well. The PlayStation 2 in particular just had a lot of great games on it. But the GameCube and the Xbox, they had some cool stuff too as well. And also some two big heavy hitters on the PC, at least, well, actually three, actually, I think. I'll double check my notes here on that. But yeah, a really great year. And so let's go ahead and just start getting into what this year brought in video games. So just going over for just some general information on this year. So 2004 saw many sequels and prequels in video games, such as, of course, the Madden NFL 2005, NBA Live 2005, ESPN NBA 2K5, Tony Hawk's Underground 2, WWE SmackDown vs. Raw, Doom 3, Dragon Quest 8, Gran Turismo 4, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Half-Life 2, Halo 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, Myst 4 Revelation, Ninja Gaiden, sorry, Pokemon Fire Red, Leaf, Green, Emerald, Pikmin 2, Everybody's Golf 4, Prince of Persia with Warrior Within, and World of Warcraft. New intellectual properties included Fable, Far Cry, Flat Out, Killzone, Katamari Damacy, Monster Hunter, I don't know what that is, Red Dead Revolver, SingStar, and Sacred. The Nintendo DS also launched this year, the first major console of the 7th generation. The year has been retrospectively considered one of the best and most influential in video game history due to the release of numerous critically acclaimed, commercially successful, and influential titles across all platforms and genres at the time. The year's best-selling video game was Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. The year's most critically acclaimed titles were Dragon Quest VIII and Gran Turismo 4 in Japan, and Half-Life 2 and San Andreas in the West. So yeah, so we got some big games here across, like, and I think that was the main thing, right? Just all across all the different platforms, right? There was just at least one or two like really standout games. So pretty impressive stuff here. Let's see, but just some events kind of going over all that happened here. So on January 20th, Wired's Vaporware Awards gives its first Lifetime Achievement Award to recurring winner Duke Nukem Forever. Yeah. I want to play that game just to see what the hell it's all about. But anyways, February 26th, Castle Wolfenstein creator Silas Warner, looks like he passed away at age 54. Let's see, March 4th, Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences hosts the 7th Annual Interactive Achievements Awards, including Peter, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Molyneux, I think, into the AIAS Hall of Fame. Game Developers Conference hosts 4th Annual Game Developers Choice Awards and Gamma Network's 6th Annual Independent Game Festival. May 11th, Nintendo announces its Revolution console. So they're starting to announce, so the companies, right, they're starting to announce what their next game consoles are going to be, or at least start giving some hints on it. And so yeah, so Nintendo had the GameCube out right now. Their next system was being codenamed Revolution at the time. May 11th through 13th, the 10th annual E3 is held in Los Angeles, California, United States. In July, IEMA hosts 5th annual Executive Summit. August 1st, a vital portion of a Street Fighter III Third Strike match takes place during the EVO 2004 tournament. So really touching base on this a bit, and I'm not too much into like the fighting game Evo scene and all, but I think this is the clip that even I know about that went pretty viral back in the day. And so if it's the one that I'm thinking of, let me just double check it real quick. Okay, yeah. So just really quick on this, because I've seen the video and it's absolutely insane. So if you some reason haven't seen this, so this was it's considered here the Evo moment number 37, or it's also known as the Dago parry. And so it was a match between let's see, let's see. So let's just So the Dago Parry is a portion of a Street Fighter 3 Third Strike semifinal match held at the Evolution Championship Series 2004 or EVO 2004 between Dago Umehara and Justin Wong. During this match, Umehara made an unexpected comeback by countering 15 consecutive hits of Wong's super art move with only one remaining unit of health. Umehara subsequently won the match, though he went on to lose the final grand or the lose the final oh my god, lose the grand final against Kenji KO Obata. Evo moment number 37 has been described as the most iconic moment in competitive video gaming, having influenced the fighting game community strongly. Yeah, so if you haven't seen this video, right, so just basically, I don't know if you YouTube like Daigo Parry, so Daigo and then Parry, Parry. It's absolutely insane, right? So it's so yeah, so like it says here, right? So Daigo Umehara, so he was controlling Ken, and Justin Wong was controlling Chung Li, and so they're duking it out. You know, they one win one match, and then the other one wins another. So it's the third round, and it's coming down to the end, and so Justin Wong, again, who's controlling Chung Li, was getting a bit of an edge on Umehara, but then right at the last bit, so let's see. So Chung Li has about half of a life bar, give or take. And then again, Ken has like next to nothing. And so Chung Li pulls off her super move where it's just a bunch of, kicks. And so, he was able to parry all of those strikes, and which is insane, right? Because you have to like tap the button forward really quickly, and let alone for like all the 15 hits that all the kicks that Chun Li's throwing. And then not only that, after he was done, he ended up pulling off his own special move and beat her. It's absolutely insane. And then the whole crowd goes wild, and it's I somehow came across it just a few years ago. Actually, I didn't know about this back then, but I was like, wow, that's a hell of a that's quite the skillful show of arcade. Or I'm sorry, God, what am I trying to say? It was a. I mean, obviously, he was very skilled, right, to pull that off, and so really impressive to watch that. So again, anyway, if you never knew anything about it, definitely worth checking out the video for that. Let's see, but then August 3rd, so Doom 3 is released, restarting the Breakthrough franchise, and featured complex graphics featuring such as unified lighting and shadowing, real-time fully dynamic per-pixel lighting, and stencil shadowing. The game became ID's best-selling game to date. Yeah. Yeah. I'll talk a bit about Doom 3 and also Half-Life 2 a bit later, but yeah, the game was pretty impressive looking. But then October 6th through 10th, so the 2004 Cyber World Games are held. October 12th, EA Sports launches the multi-format FIFA Football 2005. It is the last major title to be released for the original PlayStation console. Oh, interesting. November, so Counter-Strike Source and Half-Life 2 are officially released on PC around the world, bringing in a new era for the first-person shooter genre video games with advanced graphics and physics. Yep. Nobuo Uematsu, so the legendary composer that Squaresoft/Square Enix had, so he resigns from Square Enix and becomes a freelancer, starting his own business called Smile Please Company. And then on December 14th, Spike Video Game Awards are held. The 2004 Spike. The Spike Video Game Awards they're kind of funny when I think about it now. They were just very over the top, very like testosterone induced, all about like extreme or energy drinks, extreme everything. So I mean, they were fun for what they were, but yeah, they were they were interesting. Let's see, and then for business things, so January 12th, so Ubisoft acquires Taiwak. February, Electronic Arts consolidates, rolls most of Maxis and all of Origin systems into Redwood Shores, California. In March, Microsoft announces XNA, the successor of DirectX, as a default API for Longhorn and Xenon. I think that has to do with their next system, I think. I think that's what that's all about. I'm not sure. But then April 6th, so Midway acquires Surreal Software. April 13th, a South Korean esports organization is founded. In May, Sammy Corporation buys a controlling share in Sega Corporation at a cost of $1.1 billion, creating the new company Sega Sammy Holdings. one of the biggest video game companies in the world. In July, Square Enix restructures executive branches around the world. So we touched base on that last week. Or I'm sorry, last week for last episode. September 1st, Acclaim declares bankruptcy and closes its stores. Yeah, that was a long-standing third-party publisher that looks like they went bankrupt and closed the doors that time. October 11th, so Midway Games acquires Inevitable Entertainment and renames it Midway Studios Austin. November 30th, Midway Games acquires developer Paradox Development. December 13th, Electronic Arts purchases a 5-year exclusive agreement for the rights to the NFL, which includes NFL teams, stadiums, and players used for EA football video games. So that's kind of a big deal there. So touching base on that. So basically, I'm sure there's probably more about this, but I don't know the full exact story. But basically, at this time, so like I've already been mentioning before, right? That for many years, you would see a lot of different sports games from a lot of different companies giving their own take. Some of the games were meant to be more realistic, simulation-like, where others were just more, arcadey, but you would get a wide variety of sports games. And so even just like for the simulation style games, right? So just for example, for the NFL, we had for the long, some came and went, right? But like starting with like the fourth generation up until the sixth here. So like, let's say football, right? So in the fourth generation, we would have Joe Montana football, John Madden football. And then there was other like Capcom made a football game and like the pro quarterback football game. So there was a lot of different stuff. And then you get into the next generation. And then we had games like, like NFL Game Day. That was a game that it was one of the Sony published games, I believe. And you still had your Madden games. And then eventually we went into this generation. We had the NFL 2K series, right, which was going really strong, and they were a heavy competitor towards the Madden games. But what ended up happening, though, was, so as it says here, so December 13th, so Electronic Arts purchased its exclusive deal with the NFL, so they were the only ones that can use the NFL players' likenesses and also their, the stadiums, and basically have the NFL license, and no other video game, football game could do that. You can still make a football game, you just can't use the, like the player likenesses and all that. What I don't know, because I remember there was a lot of controversy with it back then, because the last game that was released from the NFL 2K series. Let's see, it doesn't say anything here on it. Because I remember it was kind of a big deal because, let's see, I'm going to see if I can find some information here real quick while I'm talking. But so, so again, and the Madden games, they were doing pretty good. And then, but the NFL 2K games were also doing really well. So again, NFL 2K is the game from Sega, and they were being developed by Visual Concepts, I believe. And so they were duking it out, right, as far as for, best football game. But after this, though, again, it was just pretty much Madden that we got for football games afterwards. I don't even think we got like an arcade style football game. I mean, there was one that Visual Concepts put up a few years later, which it was a football game, and it just used like a lot of legacy players, because I think you could do that. It's just as long as they weren't like current players, if I recall. But yeah, it was definitely a bit of a, I mean, it kind of sucked because NFL. So what I'm trying to look for here is from the 2K series, there was the last game that they came out with, and so let's see, it was NFL 2K, ESPN NFL 2K5. So I believe it would have been this year, right? That was the last year. Let me double check real quick, because what they did was pretty cool. It was, so again, ESPN NFL 2K. So that was a game that was from Sega, and let me see if you can be. Sorry, I should be more prepared for this. Let's see, NFL. Okay, yes. Yeah, so ESPN NFL 2K5 is a highly acclaimed 2004 American football video game for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, known for its realistic ESPN broadcast presentation. Because they got the ESPN license, and so they did that for NFL 2K4 and then NFL 2K5. deep gameplay, and low price point. So that was a big thing too, which famously challenged the Madden franchise. Developed by Visual Concept, it was the last game in the NFL 2K series to have official NFL licensing, featuring commentary from ESPN personalities like Chris Berman and modes like First Person and The Crib. So yeah, because so they were really wanting to compete against Madden, right? And so they came out with this excellent football game. I really enjoyed this one because I was liking the NFL 2K series up to this point, and this one was just really good. It felt polished all the way around. The passing game felt great. The running game felt great. The defense and everything was just spot on. The presentation and everything was just on point. And for me, better than what Madden was doing. And the Madden games were still pretty good too. But it just seemed like the NFL 2K games were the ones that were really making a lot of improvements. And they released their new edition, right, for the NFL 2K games or 2K5 games at only $20, where Madden, I believe, was still a full price game. So they were like going all out, like we're gonna try to really heavily compete against Madden. But then, like I said, right, all of a sudden, EA got the rights to the NFL licenses, which was a big deal, right? Because again, after that, if you don't have the NFL license, well, you're just not going to compete as like the more popular football game. And so then, like I said, after that, Visual Concepts, I'm not sure what happened to them. Maybe we'll find out in the years later. But it was just it was a bit of a bummer, right? Just because I thought that they made a really good football game. And at this point, I wasn't too much into football games as much as I was before, but I still enjoyed them. And I definitely bought that game just because, again, it was such a cheap price. And yeah, it's just a bit of a bummer what happened. And then, like eventually Electronic Arts. So then after that, it kind of became just more known that there was going to be only one main series of a sports that was out and not much competition, right? Like we only got Madden and basketball. I mean, the NFL 2K games ended up taking off really, but then pretty much any other sport, as far as I know, has really only been like Electronic Arts, right? Like FIFA. I mean, well, there's Pro Evolution Soccer, right? But basically, there's not as much competition out there anymore, and it almost seemed like this was sort of the turning point for that, even though this was only in the NFL. But it just seems to be like that. That after this, we just didn't get as much variety in sports games as we used to back in the day. And I feel like this might have had a big deal with it. Again, not just football, but just all across the board. But anyway, thought I'd share that because that was kind of a big deal. But if you want to play like a really cool football game, if you don't mind, like, using a roster from going back to the 2004, 2005 season, try to check this game out. I mean, if you try to buy a physical copy, and I'm sure I don't know how much it costs, but of course, there's always emulation, and it's really excellent. And yeah, just kind of a bummer that it went out the way it did. But anyways, let's see. And then December 20th, Electronic Arts purchases 20% stake in Ubisoft. The purchase at the time was considered hostile by Ubisoft. Ooh, I didn't know that. But hardware releases. So yeah, so the seventh generation kind of got going this year in forms of portable systems. So the seventh generation of video games console began this year with the launch of the Nintendo DS and PlayStation Portable, only in Japan for the latter. So yeah, so the PSP only in Japan, it came out. So because it came out in, let's see, when did it come out? December 11th in Japan. Let's see. But yeah, we'll talk more about the DS here later. But then in 2004, the total U.S. sales of video game hardware, software, and accessories was 9.9 billion, compared with 10 billion in 2003. Software sales rose 8% over the previous year to 6.2 billion. Additionally, sales of portable software titles exceeded 1 billion for the first time. Hardware sales were down 27% for the year due to part of shortages during the holiday season and price reductions from all systems. Let's see. So Sony did release an internal hard drive for the PlayStation 2 on March 23rd, and the third major hardware revision of the PlayStation 2 model SCPH 7000 was released in Japan on November 1st. So for handheld, so the Game Boy Advance SP was pretty much dominant. There was the N-Gage from Nokia, but that really didn't do a whole lot. Let's see. So for United States, so the best-selling game. So again, will be dollar value. So let's see. So Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas. So it's in here revenue and inflations. So I'll just go off of like the inflation number here. But let's see. So Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, so 420 million. Halo 2, 371 million. Madden NFL 2005 at 348 million. And ESPN NFL 2K5, 83 million. So Madden still sold considerably more, but and what I don't know about that deal that was struck between EA and the NFL, and because I remember there was some controversy about it, right? Where like EA was starting to get a monopoly on the, just on their, acquiring all these licenses. So they were like, are they going to do that with the NBA and all that? What I don't know for sure is if it was something that EA Games fronted the money to get the license, or if the NFL offered it to them because they were the more popular sports title out there. I don't know for sure. Um, that ESPN NFL 2K5 game, right, it still sold at 83 million. For some reason, they have it ranked as number 4, though, even though it is not number 4. It's because like Need for Speed Underground 2, which was number 5, was at 196 million. Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green for the Game Boy Advance was 127 million. NBA Live 2005 was 95 million. Spider-Man 2 was 112 million. And then has ESPN 2K5 and Star Wars Battlefront, but the sales figures aren't shown for those there. Alrighty, let's see. That all that we got here for. All right, so yeah, so just some information there for the year 2004 for video games. So let's start. I'm just double checking if I'm missing anything. Nope, that should do. I mean, of course I'm missing things. There's so much that happens during these years. I can't, quite get to everything. But let's talk about some of the games that came out. Now, there was a lot of games that came out, and so on some of these, I'm probably going to miss some things here. So let's see. I'll just gonna go over. I just jotted down some of the more major releases, but it was another big year for multi-platform games. And again, these are games that came out on at least more than one system. We had a lot of sequels this year, and definitely some of them are just expanded more on what the previous one was doing. Some maybe not as much, but they were still, for the most part, pretty good games. So we had another Tony Hawk game. So Tony Hawk's Underground 2. At this point, I mentioned before, I was already done with the series for me personally. I don't know how much popular like this one was here, Tony Hawk's Underground 2. But it was still kind of doing its more open world-ish sort of gameplay style. And I mean, apparently it was popular enough to, have another one created. But yeah, other than that, though, I don't know, I guess, what like the overall fan reception is of that one there. Because again, this is where the point where I was like, I kind of checked out on this series. But one game, though, that I did really like was Need for Speed Underground 2. And so this one here is more of the same, only again, a little bit more of an open world structure to it, if I recall right, which was kind of the theme of a lot of games back then. They were starting to try to do kind of open world to some extent. The success of the Grand Theft Auto games really changed things a lot as far as like how games were being developed and, what people wanted and whatnot. But yeah, Need for Speed Underground 2 is still an excellent racing game and has some more stuff to get into, I believe, than the first one. So definitely, if you like the first one, definitely check this one out. Again, because with all the licenses that it has, with the cars, the music, this would probably be just, emulation is the only way I can think of getting this game now. Maybe on one of the PC stores, I'm not 100% sure. But another sequel that we got was Prince of Persia: Warrior Within. This one was pretty good. It kind of has the same gameplay as the first one. The tone of the game and everything just changed a lot. So another thing that was happening during this time stretch was like it felt like everything needed to be like really edgy and dark. And it's definitely not a bad game. It's good, and I just felt like the tone of the first one fit the vibe of what Prince of Persia games are better. But It's still not bad though, and it's the darker mood and all that. It definitely gives it a different vibe, right? So it almost feels like two completely different games, but it is technically continuing the story from the first one. But yeah, but still cool, worth playing, and has a cool little intro with I think it was Godsmack that they use one of their songs on. So but yeah, a decent game overall though. But then we also got Red Dead Revolver, which is sort of a I mean, it's in the same series, I guess you could say, as another popular series that would eventually come out later. But for now, Red Dead Revolver, it's a Western game, and I don't know too much about this one. I haven't really played it, but it's more kind of like an action game from what I understand. And it seems like it did okay. I don't I think like the reception at the time was like it's not bad, it's all right. But I want to say that it was a game that was originally started by Capcom, but then Rockstar took over and finished the game, and so it's the version that we have now. And then they ended up getting I guess the rights to that license there, as again they would explore that franchise in bigger ways, down the road. But then we also got Medal of Honor: Pacific Assault. So this one, it was decent. This one takes place more like like it says right in the Pacific area during World War II, and has a pretty cool intro where you're going through like the Pearl Harbor attack. And I think they were trying to capitalize off of the Pearl Harbor movie, which I don't even know how well that movie did in the box office. But yeah, it's not bad. It's a decent first person shooter as well too. But there was Def Jam Fight for New York, and this one expanded more on what the first Def Jam Vendetta game was doing. Only now you're fighting in a lot of urban areas and has a lot of different rappers again, and the gameplay is expanded upon some, the story mode as well too. And yeah, great wrestling games. Like I mean, they have so much character to them. Awesome hip hop soundtrack and cool graphics, and that are over exaggerated versions of some real life people, but it's a lot of fun, and definitely check these games out if you somehow can. And there was also Mortal Kombat Deception. So I think I missed out on talking about Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, which that game would have come out, I believe, maybe 2002. I could be wrong. But Mortal Kombat started going in a different direction with Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, and then this one here for Mortal Kombat Deception, where it was like a 3D fighting game. Now we have like actual character, like polygonal character models, and we've gone away from doing like digital character models. Now we've been away from that now for a bit, and it changed up the gameplay as well too, where you can change from different combat styles and also attack with a weapon, and they're pretty fun. I did play Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance more, and I think a little bit of this one, and they're pretty fun games, and definitely. It's funny because I felt that they were pretty popular at the time, but I just don't really hear much about them anymore. And I mean, they haven't had any kind of re-release at all, as far as I know. But yeah, I mean, not a bad game. I think like if you enjoy the overall Mortal Kombat lore and all, it would be worth trying to seek these games out somehow. Again, you probably might have to resort to emulation unless you can buy an original copy out there somewhere if you still have the original hardware. Because Mortal Kombat Deception came out, I know, for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. I don't know if it came out for the GameCube. I don't. I want to say no, but I'm not sure. Excuse me, but I know it emulates pretty well on the PlayStation 2. And then we also got Silent Hill 4: The Room. So this one went a bit multi-plat, where it was on the PlayStation 2 and also came out on the Xbox and maybe PC. And this one is still pretty good. It's different. It started changing up the formula, which it kind of felt that the Hill series needed to do at this point. Because 1, 2, 3, as far as the gameplay structure and all, they're kind of similar. This one's sort of the same, but the overall setting to it and all, I mean, it's a bit different. Where now it has an interesting concept where so it's called Silent Hill 4: The Room, and so you're in this apartment room, but then eventually you get access to go to a different area. I'll just say, but otherwise you're kind of stuck in this room though, and your room is all locked up, and so the mystery is like, why is that, right? And so I never did get to beat this game, so I'm not quite sure how it ends, but it had an intriguing setup, and I mean, the combat was okay. The puzzle solving was okay from what I can tell. So this is actually one that I want to go back to and beat at some point. I want to see how the story finishes up on that one. Yeah, an incredible soundtrack also from the same composer. So I would say that this was probably like the last great Silent Hill game that we got that was a bit different from the trilogy, but still pretty good. But then after that, we went through a stretch where there just wasn't, we just didn't really get a whole lot of good Silent Hill games until more recent, right? But still worth playing. If you really enjoy parts 1, 2, 3, I would say definitely still check this one out. It is a bit different though, right, than the other ones. But another game that I want to give another shot at is so the Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. And this one I came out on the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and maybe the GameCube also. And this one was interesting because so we had the two hack and slash games that came out before, right? From based on the Two Towers and the Return of the King movies. This one was a turn-based RPG, and I'm having a hard time remembering a lot of it because I got a ways into it, but it's a turn-based RPG that is heavily inspired by Final Fantasy X. I mean, it really the combat it's pretty much the same as Final Fantasy X. It's which is not a bad thing because Final Fantasy X has one of my favorite turn-based battle systems. Um, but only now with Lord of the Rings, setting to it. Uh, I I don't quite recall. I think it's set like the setting and the story. I think it's set around the time frame of the movies, but you're not playing the characters from the movies, right? You're playing original characters, and but some of the places that you visit though seem taken from the movie. So the aesthetics and everything is definitely inspired by the movie. So it almost feels like it'd be a game based on the movies, but again, it's telling its own original story from what I recall. But I do remember liking it though. Like I said, because the combat system is really excellent, and it had incredible music, and sounds and all. Again, taken a lot from the movie, and so would definitely want to give this game another shot, just so I can recall what exactly it was all about. I just remember liking it back then, and it got decent reviews at the time. So curious to check this one out again, as it was by Electronic Arts, and so they were doing pretty good with the Lord of the Ring license at the time, right, for video games that were coming out with them. But speaking also of licensed games, so we had Spider-Man 2, and this one was on the PlayStation 2, and I want to say the Xbox as well too. And so this game was really popular. And, we had the Spider-Man 2 movie that came out this year as well, which was very popular as well. And so this game, I remember playing it back in the day. And one of the things that people really enjoyed about it was the swinging mechanic as you're, swinging through New York City. And people just felt like they got it really right with this one. And it was just a lot of fun. And the overall structure of the game, it's kind of like, I mean, again, a lot of things were going open world, so sort of had a bit of a inspiration from Grand Theft Auto, and you're finding missions to do, and exploring the city and completing objectives and whatnot. Only as a superhero, right, where you're punching and kicking the bad guys, and again swinging through the city. And the story, I think, if I recall, it kind of takes it goes off of the events of the movie, I believe, but then also throws in its own sort of original storylines in the game as well. Like I want to say, I could be wrong, but or maybe it was another Spider-Man game, but I remember this one section where you're fighting Mysterio, I think, and I thought that section was pretty cool. And I'm pretty sure it was in this game. But yeah, it was a popular game back then, and still a game that's looked fondly on as having some of the best swing mechanics in a Spider-Man game, up until we ended up getting the more recent games from Insomniac. But yeah, this is what we had though at the time, and it was pretty enjoyable. But another game too, also that was a multi-plat and really excellent game is Burnout 3 Takedown. So I really got into this series here, starting with this game. They're just so much fun, and where the whole point of the game is to, I mean, it's a racing game, I guess, but it's you're trying to take out your opponent, and in a takedown. Oh God, now I got that K-pop song stuck in my head now. I swear, like we were listening to that song, "Takedown," like for several months. My daughters have, they haven't been listening to it as much anymore now, but for like several months, so that was all they wanted to listen to. So I got that song in my head now. But anyways, Burnout 3 Takedown. It was just an excellent game, and because I never really got into part 1 and 2, and I don't know to what extent those games really emphasize the whole crashing mechanic of it. But it's a racing combat game, basically, in my eyes, as you're again trying to take out your opponent, and just a lot of fun, and it definitely became one of my favorite racing games, even if it's more of an arcade kind of racing game. But just an absolute blast to play through, and graphics are pretty incredible. A decent licensed soundtrack, but just so much fun and some of the best gameplay you'll play in any genre, really. I mean, I just felt this game was just absolutely so much fun. And if for some reason you haven't played a Burnout game, again, I can't really speak to 1 and 2, which is probably why I don't think I talked about them in the previous episodes. But this is the one here that really got me into it, and just an absolute blast to play. They're so much fun. Burnout 3 Takedown. And so for handhelds, so I don't have too much info that I can give on this here, but just touching base on this real quick. So we had so on the Game Boy Advance, we had Mario versus Donkey Kong, which is kind of a puzzle game of some sort between Mario and Donkey Kong. They're fighting against each other through solving puzzles, I believe. I don't quite know. I know that there was a recent remake that was done of it. But yeah, but other than that, I'm not too familiar with this game. But then there was the Legend of Zelda: Diminished Cap, which was a pretty cool 2D Zelda game, kind of in the style of A Link to the Past, but its own thing. And it was developed by Capcom. But Capcom seems to have done pretty well for Zelda games, as they also had the Oracle of Ages and Season game some years ago. And yeah, I mean, they have a pretty good understanding of how Zelda games work, and because this one was from I got a ways into it back in the day, and I remember liking it a lot. So yeah, it's a pretty good overall Zelda game. And we also got Metroid Zero Mission. And Metroid Zero Mission is basically a remake of the first Metroid game, and one of the best remakes out there, I believe. It's it's a great game. It really improved on a lot of things from the original one that just made it a lot more user friendly to play, and ends up being one of the better 2D Metroid games in my opinion. And it's I mean, it's a bit of a different vibe than the first one. So if you're really into the series, I would still recommend checking out the original Metroid game on the Nintendo. But this one is definitely the more user friendly, and I would say overall better way to play this game, and just a lot of fun. It's not my favorite 2D Metroid game, but it's probably one of the more funner ones. Just something about the way the level designs are set up and how quickly Samus moves that just makes it a real, just a lot of fun to go through. And I've beaten this game several times, and I just, because it's not too long either, and I just have a lot of fun when I play this game. And yeah, definitely was worth, it was probably one of the more reasons why I kept holding on to my Game Boy Advance at the time, and just to play this game. But at this time, actually, I think I mentioned it before, I was playing most of my Game Boy games, not so much handheld, but on the Game Boy player, the Game Boy Advance player adapter that goes underneath the GameCube. And it's funny because nowadays I play games handheld quite a bit, just because just the time that I have to play is just more handheld. But back then, I didn't like playing handheld. I didn't like playing on a small screen, so I always wanted to play it on the bigger screen. But I did want to play some of these games, so that's why I got that Game Boy Advance player adapter for the GameCube, and that worked out really well back in those days. Let's see. And then also there was the Pokemon Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Emerald. I don't have a whole lot of information on these, but I just know that they were really popular, and they came out this year, at least in North America. But getting to some of the exclusives now, though, on these systems. So starting with the PlayStation 2. So there was a lot of great games on this, and again, I'm sure I'm missing several games here as well too. But just touching base on some of these here. So we had Tekken 5, which is an excellent fighting game. and probably outside of Tekken 3, probably my next favorite Tekken game. I really enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed the new characters that were added to it, and has, for the PlayStation 2, incredible graphics and a really great soundtrack as well too. And just overall, I just enjoyed the vibe of this one a lot. It's yeah, I would say it's probably my second favorite Tekken game out there, and a lot of fun. And yeah, I put some hours into this one. I really enjoyed it. It has probably one of my favorite songs in a Tekken game too. Also, where it's kind of like this hip hop sounding song where the stage that it plays on, it's the one where there's like these, you're like in an underground sort of, I don't know, some kind of an underground sort of like hangout place, and there's like cars in the back, and people cheering on, and also it's almost seems like you're in this underground kind of fight club sort of arena, and the song that plays is just, I don't know, it's really cool. But yeah, anyways, Tekken 5, really cool game. And then we got the Halo killer, Killzone. So Sony was hyping this one up a bit as it was to be a Halo killer, and so we started seeing this with some first person shooter games that were coming out where they were labeling them as Halo killers. I think they wanted to say like, where our game is better than Halo. Ultimately, none of them really were, but doesn't mean that they weren't bad. That they were bad games though, and so. Killzone, it was developed by Guerrilla Games, and one thing Guerrilla Games started getting a reputation for, even to this day, is that they have some of the best visuals around. They really know how to make games stand out as far as visually. And Killzone, so it was a first-person shooter, and it felt a bit different though than other first-person shooters. And one of the things about that it did on that was that as you're walking around and moving, like with your holding your gun and all, panning around, and the weight of the gun and all, it feels like it has that, like it has some heaviness to it. And so it felt a little odd at first, but once you get used to it, it definitely has a different feel to it, and a bit kind of realistic as well too. But in the game though, you're on a different planet and you're taking out these, what are they called? The Hellgas, which are these, I mean, they look like humans, but they have like these suits and masks and all that. They have like these red eyes, and very unique setting. And it's I really enjoy the Killzone games, especially the ones that came afterwards. And this is the start of it. And so this one, it's a bit rough in some areas, but still a pretty fun game though. And again, graphically and audibly, the game is really impressive for what they were doing back then. I booted up the game a little while ago, and I was still really impressed with how good it looks on the PlayStation 2. The graphics are very much, kind of like lots of browns and grays and pea greens, almost, it seems like. So it's not a very colorful game, and then we would get used to that style in the next generation a lot. But as far as the character models, the frame rate at the time anyways, and just the effects and the look of the guns and all it in the animations and everything, it was pretty impressive. Killzone is a really impressive looking game. And so I think that's one of the things that Sony was trying to hype this game up on, right? That it was a Halo killer. At the end of the day, it wasn't better than Halo, but it was still a cool first-person shooter that started a franchise that would just get better afterwards, at least for the next two entries. And for a while there, right, was a cool exclusive on the Sony PlayStation consoles. Let's see. But then we started getting some sequels, right, to a lot of our favorite games that had already been on the PlayStation 2 prior. So I talked about Maximo Ghost to Glory a few episodes back. So we got a sequel here from Capcom. So this one is called Maximo versus Army of Zin. And this one is really excellent. I feel like this is a very underrated game on the PlayStation 2. I wish they would release these games somehow. And this one I really enjoyed more than the first one, where the first one, it was difficult, right? The challenge can be off-putting, and then also the continue system that it had, it was a bit unforgiving. But this one is a lot more user-friendly, but it's still challenging though. And they buttoned up the controls and all, and the overall setting and the stage layouts, and just the overall story. It just feels a lot funner to go through, and just an excellent action platforming game. Excuse me. And so again, it's a bit of a hack and slash game, and just really wonderful. I really enjoyed this game. I wish it would get more recognition, and actually, even just talking about it right now, I feel like playing it. It's really a fun game to play. And so this one, it's like a kind of like Ghouls and Ghosts, where you're like this medieval warrior, and if you get hit enough, you're running around in your boxers. So again, it's a bit silly, but this time you're taking on this robotic army, hence the Army of Zen, and just a lot of the different locations you go through. It's really fun, and it's kind of it sort of reminded me a little bit about like a Tim Burton production too, in some extent, only with that Japanese anime aesthetic. That the artist that did the character designs, he's apparently pretty popular in Japan, from what I recall. But Maximo, they're cool games. If you've never heard about them, seek them out if you can. So again, the first one, Maximo Goes to Glory, pretty cool but very challenging. Maximo versus Army of Zen, an excellent action hack and slash 3D platformer, and this is one that I think is really cool. It has like really cool boss fights, cool levels, just a great game. I'm surprised that, I mean, it kind of buzzed me out that this game didn't get a whole lot of recognition. Just a really great game. But then we also got Jack 3, so the third installment now in the Jack and Daxter series. And so this one, it was open world and had a similar structure to the second one, only now you're kind of more out in a desert area, so it has a bit of a Mad Max sort of setting to it. And they lessened the difficulty, so it's not quite as hard, but it's still a bit challenging. And yeah, just an overall excellent game as well. This one and the second one, a lot of games from this era, I beat a lot of them. I just don't recall a whole lot of them though. I remember the last boss fight. I do remember that, and it was pretty epic. But I don't recall a lot more. But I remember I was having a blast with it though the whole way through, and just an excellent 3D platformer. I still enjoy the first one more. I felt Jack and Daxter just kind of worked best as just a generic, or not generic, but like your typical 3D platformer as a collectathon and all, instead of, once they introduced the gunplay and all. Not that it's bad. It just, I don't know. It just wasn't my thing for this series, but it's still pretty excellent though. And some of the vehicles you get to drive around in and all was pretty fun. It's a bit open world, right? Again, with as they were going in that direction with this installment here, and it was the end of the trilogy, and so yeah, pretty cool overall. It's the Jack and Daxter trilogy on the PlayStation 2 was pretty excellent, and this one I felt did a not my favorite one, but it capped off the franchise or the series, at least on the PlayStation 2, in pretty fine form there. But another platformer game that came out as a sequel was Sly 2 Band of Thieves. I really enjoyed the first Sly Cooper game. I thought it was a lot of fun, classic 3D platforming, and just a cool characters. And this one here, from what I understand, it's a fan favorite. I remember playing this one a bit, and I did enjoy it. Again, it kind of started introducing some open world elements to it. But it's another one too that I don't remember a whole lot about it though, other than that I was enjoying it. But I didn't beat it, so this is definitely one that I would want to go back to and try to beat at some point, because I really enjoyed the first one, and like I said, I've heard that this one is kind of the more fan favorite one. But then we also got another sequel. Well, this is a third installment, and that's for Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal. And so, yeah, another excellent Ratchet and Clank game. And I believe again, another game that I don't recall a whole lot, even though I did beat it back then. I want to say that I still like Going Commando more, but this one I had a lot of fun with it too. So they were almost like neck and neck from what I can recall. And I know this one has like some 2D segments where you control Captain Quark, and I remember those being pretty fun. But definitely, I mean, a great game. The whole Ratchet and Clank trilogy, also on the PlayStation 2, was really great. So for these platforming games, right, or series, right, so Jack, Sly Cooper, and Ratchet and Clank, the whole trilogy on the PlayStation 2, really excellent. Highly recommend you get them all. Because Sly 3 comes out, I believe, next year. But all of them are just really excellent games. But then, speaking of a third sequel, we also had Onimusha 3 Demon Siege. So this is a sequel again to the Onimusha games. And so kind of more of the same in a way, only now it did away with the pre-rendered backdrops, and now it has 3D backgrounds. But otherwise, the character still kind of controls the same, and and all. But it's still kind of more of the same. But it's pretty cool. Only this time now you do go into modern times, as there's a one of the characters you control, he's from modern Paris, I believe, and somehow the two worlds collide with the past and then the present, and the character that's from the present, I forgot his name in the game, but his likeness is taken off of the French actor Jean Reno, I believe is his name. I could have his name wrong, but he's been in a lot of movies back in the day. He's a great actor. I enjoyed watching him in a lot of movies back in the day. But anyways, they take his at least his facial likeness off of him. And yeah, cool game overall. It's again another one that I beat back then. I don't remember a whole lot other than that I really enjoyed it though back then. And it was yeah, I mean just a great game, and has probably one of the coolest CGI intros of all time. It is so epic. And if you've never played this game, and and again, this game as of right now, it's not available anywhere as far as I know, and it was only on the PlayStation 2 back then, I believe. But maybe they'll re-release it since they've already done one and two. But I think a lot of that has to do because of the likeness of the characters. Using some of the actors' faces, that could be part of it. But if they do end up releasing it, that'd be so cool because, and again, the intro is so cool. So, anyways, if you aren't able to play this game now, but you want to see a cool intro, just YouTube. So Onimusha 3 intro, and it's a little long, but it's really cool, right? Basically, you see Samanowski infiltrate this. I guess you could say like an enemy base that's on top of like this huge demon-like creature, and then while you're inside this base, he fights off a lot of enemies, and then he takes on these two kind of like these warthog warriors with spears. But then after that, you get challenged by this demon that's a swordsman, and the choreography of it and the music and all, it is so epic. And I remember I used to like watching that intro over and over and over again, and just get goosebumps because it is so well directed, and just really gets you hyped up to play the game. Again, unfortunately, you can't really do a lot of the moves that they show, like in this CGI cutscene, but it is truly excellent. And again, probably my favorite CGI intro in a video game ever. It's really that good. Definitely check it out if you get a chance. Let's see. But then we also got Gran Turismo 4 this year. Well, we got it late in December, like really late in Japan, and then it came out in North America in February. But I'll just talk about it here a bit. And I remember owning this game, and it's kind of more Gran Turismo. I don't know exactly a lot like what exactly new it introduced as far as gameplay goes and all. But it was just kind of more of the same, right? You got a big selection of cars you can choose from, a lot of courses you can play, very realistic. But the one thing that I thought was interesting about this on a technical level was that the graphics were really impressive, as Gran Turismo games are always. But this was one of the first games that I was able to experience 1080i. And so that resolution there, we're getting a bump up from, so on this generation, the highest resolution that was starting to become a bit of a standard later on in the generation was 480p, so progressive scan, which, at the time, at least for the TVs that could output it, it looked pretty sharp, pretty colorful and all. And then there was 720p, which maybe, let's see, what was it? I think it was like Soul Calibur 2 on the Xbox that I think could output that. But here we are with Gran Turismo 4, and it was outputting at 1080i. And so not quite 1080p, right? So they're a bit different, where 1080i, it's like interlaced, right? So there's a bunch of lines sort of like going across the screen and all to form this sharp image. It's kind of a very basic way of explaining it, but ultimately it looked pretty sharp though, right, back then. And I remember the TV that I had, it could output at 1080i, and so when I turned on that option, I do remember it looking really crisp and sharp on the CRT TV that I had, and I was really outstanded by that. And just again, they were starting to introduce these higher resolutions that would become more the standard in the later generations. But yeah, to do a 1080i game on the PlayStation 2, that was pretty impressive. Because a lot of games in the next generation, I mean, they were advertised as high definition systems, but a lot of them were at 720p, if that. And so, to get a 1080i resolution on a game from this generation was pretty impressive. But other than that, though, a great Gran Turismo game, though. But for me, my favorite game of this year, though, was Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater. Well, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. And so this one, it's going. So in the timeline of the Metal Gear Solid games, it's the first one, but in a lot of ways, it still kind of feels like a sequel to the second one, though. But you have to kind of play the games, or the stories get really convoluted and all. But uh, it simplified the story some on this one, as part two really went crazy with a lot of the storyline to it and all. This one simplified things some, but still has an excellent cast of characters, great stealth mechanics as now you're in the jungle, and so the way you use your camouflage and hunt for food, I mean, it gave me a lot of like Rambo vibes almost, but yeah, just a truly excellent game, and it also felt a bit like something like James Bond, a very sort of 60s spy movie thriller. And it's really excellent and an amazing story, great gameplay, great acting, just all around an excellent game. And I can see why for many people this is their favorite Metal Gear Solid game. It's not quite mine. I still prefer the first one more, but this is my second favorite one though. And there's just so much good stuff to this one here. Some of the stuff can be a bit cheesy, and especially when you play it now, but it's still truly excellent and highly worth playing. This one, as the new one that came out, I've talked about it before, but it's pretty good. It's not bad, but in some ways, I feel like the look of this game fits the style more than the more realistic graphics of the new one. But I don't know. Like I said, I really enjoyed the new one too, but I still feel this one is worth playing and checking out. It's just an incredible game. However you play this game, because again, there's a few different versions you can play of it. It's truly excellent, and yeah, just definitely one of the better gaming experiences I've had in this generation. Some of the best boss fights I've ever played. It's just, they're just, I couldn't believe some of the stuff that I was doing with some of these boss fights. It was absolutely incredible, especially with this certain old character, I'll say. That was highly memorable boss fight and one of my favorite ones of all time. Just an incredible game. Incredible. But then the biggest game of the year, though, for sure. I mean, I believe it's the highest selling PlayStation 2 game of all time, and that's Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. This game was just huge, and we had the Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City, right, which were they became big hits. Then there was a year break where we didn't get one in 2003. Well, I think they were ported over, or I think they were, yeah, those two were ported over to the Xbox, I believe, in 2003. I don't quite recall, but we got this one though on the PlayStation 2. And Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, oh man, this game was massive at the time. Not only in just like the sales and the popularity, but also just the size of the game world that you play in. So San Andreas is not so much a city. This is more like almost like a not quite a state maybe, but like a region basically, right? And it really is modeled after or California. So you got Los Santos, which is pretty much Los Angeles. You get oh God, what are the other Las Venturas, which is pretty much Las Vegas, and then San Fierro, which is pretty much San Francisco. And I mean, so you get the cities, right, which are pretty decent size for the time, and then in between the cities, you have a lot of like you know outdoor areas, right? Like, as you're driving between cities, right? You get a lot of like just natural landscapes and whatnot. And there's so much to do in this game. And a lot of voice talent again in this one too. I mean, a lot of popular actors from like Samuel L. Jackson to Chris Pine to James Woods, Kid Frost, I believe. Yeah, it's just this game was just huge and a great soundtrack too, because the setting takes place like in the 90s. So it has a lot of like music from that time frame. So there's like an excellent hip hop station, a really cool alternative rock station, and it just really puts you in that time frame there. And I mean, the game is hyper violent. You basically play this guy that's you were in a game back in the day, but then you come back to Los Santos, as you have some family issues, and then you hook up with your old gang friends or gang member friends from back in the day, and it's and it. I grew up, I was a teenager during the 90s, right? So a lot of the stuff, it kind of reminded me of a lot of things from back then. And so absolutely enjoyed this game. And for me personally, my favorite Grand Theft Auto game, although I never beat it, but I got really far into it. I didn't quite beat it though. But I must have been towards the end though, but yeah, just I need to go back and finish this game. I was just loving every moment of it. Some of the missions, again, and all, because the controls were improved on from the other two, but the controls in the PlayStation 2 trilogy, they've, in some ways they haven't aged the best, especially with, how the controls improved in the later installments, but still a lot of fun though. And yeah, I mean, it's, if you want to take if you want to time travel back to the 90s, definitely check this game out. There's just so much cool stuff in this one here. CJ, the main character, and all his buddies that he has in it. It's just hilarious. But a lot of good stuff in it, and just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this game, and not quite my favorite game of the year, because again, Metal Gear Solid 3 was still that for me, but just overall an excellent game. I really enjoyed this one. All right, but that's what I got for the PlayStation 2. So we'll hop over to the GameCube. And again, I'm probably missing out on some of these games, right? They came out on these systems, but the ones that I remember were standouts still on the GameCube is so the first one was Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes. And so what this is, it's a remake, I guess you can say. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess a remake of the first Metal Gear Solid game. So that sounds cool and all, right? And I was really excited for this because they were, improving the graphics, right? Which was one of the things about the first one, right? That it can be a bit rough to go back into, just because, the graphics are which I enjoy, but the low poly aesthetic isn't for everyone. So it improved the graphics and put them almost on par with like what we were seeing in Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, which was a really excellent looking game for the time. And it also had the gameplay of Metal Gear Solid 2, where you could do like first person shooting or hide the bodies too also. So that expanded things more. And and so overall, right, that was all looking great. They got the voice cast to come back and re-record their lines. They were able to get most of the same actors. So that was all cool and all. But I mean, it seemed like a great time, right? And it was exclusive to the GameCube. So it was developed by this company called Silicon Knights, and they would get a bit controversial later, but they were also the team that did the Eternal Darkness game. But Hideo Kojima gave his blessing though on this game though, and all of that seems cool, right? Like it was going to be, oh, excellent, a remake of the first Metal Gear Solid game. Let's go. It comes with a few caveats, all right, and just something to know if you're going into this one here. I would say still check it out if you really enjoy Metal Gear Solid. It's definitely worth playing if you can, track this one to play down somehow or to play somehow. But two things though that kind of stand out that was a bit of a nuisance. Oh, and another thing too that I thought was really good too. I thought the soundtrack to the first one was really good. They changed up some of the songs in this one, but I actually think in some cases it was really good as well too. So, like some of the boss fights, the boss battle tune in the first one is iconic. This one changes it up, but it's still pretty cool though. It's like the fight against the ninja. I thought was the song that when you're fighting him, I thought was excellent. But anyway, so some of the things against this one though. The voice acting was mostly done, from my understanding, by the same voice actors as the first one. So that's great. They took out some of the accents, though, of some of the characters that I feel kind of made them lose a bit of their personality. So for like Mei Ling and Naomi Campbell and Natasha Romanenko are the main ones. Oh, and Vulcan also, too. And Gray Fox. So Gray Fox, I believe he did get a new voice actor. Maybe it was Vulcan Raven, too. I'm not sure. But they sound different now, and so like for Mei Ling, Naomi Campbell, and Natasha, they don't have their accents anymore, and so I feel like it kind of took away a bit of their personality. Their acting is fine enough because I believe on all three of them it was the same voice actresses that redid their roles. It's just that when they lose their accent, I don't know, it took away some of their charm of their personalities that they had. And for Vulcan, he sounds a bit. In the first one, he had a bit of a Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of voice, this is Raven's territory. I shall not let you pass. Where this one, he sounds a bit punier, I guess, and considering that he's a big hulking, muscular dude, So that was a bit of a knock. And then also Gray Fox. It's not bad in this new one, but the first one, I felt that voice just landed really well to the character. And so this one, like in the very more dramatic moments of the character, I feel like it doesn't have that impact as much. So still, I mean, it's forgivable, but it does lose some of its edge because of that. But the main thing though about this one though is, so if you've heard that this one's a bit controversial, the main thing about it is that this game was they didn't just take like the cutscenes from the first one and prettied them up with the newer graphics. This one, the cutscenes were redone and directed by someone else other than, excuse me, Hideo Kojima. I forgot the director's name, and apparently he had Hideo Kojima's blessing. I don't quite know, but I believe that was the case. But he's I think this new director though, he was known to do like action movies, I think, in Japan. I'm not sure. But the cutscenes though are very over the top though. I mean, like very over the top. I'll just describe one of them so you kind of get an idea of what you're going into. There's this one particular scene where let's see, how does it go? Snake like jumps up in the air as a missile is coming towards him. He puts his foot on the missile, jumps off of it, and then shoots his rocket launcher. Right? I think that's how that all goes down. But basically, it's over the top like that. Now, Metal Gear Solid games, yes, they are over the top and all, but they're still grounded in a certain sense of realism. And so this one here goes like extreme, almost anime style. That not that that's bad, and if it works in the context of what your product is, that can work. It can look really cool, but because Snake doing stuff like that you would almost think of like maybe Dante doing, Devil May Cry. It throws the tone of the game off completely, and that's just one example. There's a lot of other weird examples like that, and it definitely changes the tone of the game. They're kind of entertaining, I guess, but they're really over the top though, and I felt that wasn't necessary. And so it's an interesting way to check out the game Metal Gear Solid, but not my preferred way. I still prefer the PlayStation version. But if you're wanting to check out something exclusive to the GameCube, it's worth checking out for that. Just kind of know that you're going into those two little caveats that I mentioned there. But another game that was really popular on the GameCube, though, and I haven't played this game all the way. I've actually only played it a little bit just to test it out. Is Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. And so, the first Paper Mario game was getting some popularity, and this one seemed like it was people seem to really like it as well too. I just don't have a whole lot of experience. I did get the remake of it somewhat recently, and I've played it a little bit, to test it out, and it seems fun. I want to get into these Mario RPGs more, like the Super Mario RPG, the Paper Mario series, and then also like the Mario and Luigi games on the Game Boy Advance and the DS. But I just haven't gotten to around to them yet. But it seems cool though. It seems funny. It seems like a fun little adventure, and maybe one that I'll try to play with my kids at some point, right? Try to get them into RPGs if they end up getting interested in that. But I know it was pretty popular on the GameCube at the time. But for me, the standout game on the GameCube though this year was Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. And so this one was still developed by Retro Studios. So they did the really excellent Metroid Prime, which I gushed about, a few episodes back. So this one, it's kind of more of the same in the sense that it seems to be running on the same kind of graphic engine, the same, more or less the same gameplay and all. Only now you're in a completely different world, and you're gonna have new power ups and such. And so I haven't quite beaten this game either. I got really far into it and I was liking it. I do enjoy the vibe of this game, and I want to go back to it and all just because uh the first one was just so excellent. I was a bit let down by the fourth one. So I want to go back to this one and just kind of see what Retro Studios was doing at this time and get a refresher on this game, because it's been years since I've played it. And again, I didn't beat it. But a few things that I recall is that the graphics are really amazing. The whole light and dark world, it's a bit, I remember being a bit confused by it as far as like where you need to go and all, but I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a cool concept. The power-ups are pretty cool. The bosses, what I fought, were pretty cool. But I do remember the game being very difficult, which I know the game now, with the, with just video game information be out there more. Now I know that it had a reputation for that. But I remember that did kind of put me off on the game because I got stuck on some boss, and then I just never. There were so many games that were coming out during this time stretch that I just ended up dropping the game. But I do want to go back to it at some point, as I feel like I'll really end up appreciating the game a lot now. Um, but yeah, Metro Prime 2 Echoes, a great game that I think was just this one didn't seem to get quite as much popularity because it felt like it was sort of like the Majora's Mask to Ocarina of Time, where it's kind of more of the same but a bit of a darker tone, so maybe didn't quite have the mainstream appeal as the first one. And it was just sandwiched in between a lot of other excellent games everywhere, and so it felt like this game kind of went under a lot of people's radar, but still a pretty excellent game though, and highly revered by the people that did end up playing it though. But then jumping over to the Xbox, um, so we had some games on this, and some of these games might have come out on the PC, but on console, right? They were exclusive, at least up to this point, on the Xbox. But we had the Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay. So kind of like last year, where we had that Enter the Matrix game that was sort of like a side story to what was going on in the movies. This one is kind of the same here. So we had um, Van Diesel that came back, reprised his role as Riddick from his Pitch Black game and the Chronicles of Riddick movie. And he this is an original story, which I believe this one I think it takes place in the events before the Pitch Black movie. So you kind of get to see how he escapes from this prison and then eventually he gets caught, right, and all. And then if you watch the first Pitch Black movie, well, you know what happens from there. But this movie here, though, or I'm sorry, this game here, it was I guess you could say it's like an immersive sim first person game. As you're in this prison, you're talking to people, inmates, trying to solve a mystery, trying to almost like an RPG, almost to some extent. But so, because it's not just like a straight up shooter, there was actually some melee combat in it, and the graphics actually were pretty impressive too, as it was, if I recall right, it was doing something that like Doom 3 was doing also with like just really dynamic shadows and the lighting to it and all was pretty impressive, which in this game was important because part of the game is that, you're hiding in the shadows and you can see in the shadows, right? And all because of the abilities that Riddick has, right? Where you can see in the dark. And so, I mean, it was pretty cool. It was we were starting to see games that were giving us a bit of a glimpse as to what the graphics of the next generation would be, and so this is one of them, right? Because I remember being really impressed with the level of detail in the textures and all, at least at the time on this game, and overall a really great game that I wish would get re-released. And well, there was a version I think that came out on the Xbox 360, but at least this version, I wish they would have released it on the like for backwards compatible on the Xbox, but. Again, I'm assuming because of the license and all, it's probably not possible. But there might be a version of play of this on. Actually, I'm curious because I really did enjoy this game. Is it on Steam? Let's have a quick look here. Chronicles of Riddick. Nope. Okay. Well, at a quick search, it doesn't seem like it's on Steam, but I don't know. Maybe it's available somewhere, but as far as I know, there was this one of like an expanded version of this on the 360, if I recall right. But then that's as much as I know. But if you can track it down somehow to play, definitely worth playing. I don't know if it emulates very well on the Xbox because again, Xbox emulators are a bit of a hit and miss. But yeah, if you can play it somehow, definitely worth your time. It's pretty cool. But then we had Fable, and Fable was it's a cool game. It's like a cool kind of. I mean, it's an action RPG set in a sort of whimsical fantasy sort of setting, and this game was so it was Lionhead Studios, which was headed by Peter Molyneux. We talked about him a little bit earlier, and so the game kind of was overhyped a bit. And by that I mean that it was they were hyping this game up like you were going to have so many options to do in this game, everything from like well, actually, I don't even know how much they were hyping it up, but I remember that they were saying you were going to be able to pretty much do anything in this world, and just it was going to be truly revolutionary and all. The game that we ended up getting, it's an action RPG at heart, and so you have like you can explore towns and areas, and has its puzzles to do, and combat was pretty cool too. Also, how you can mix your melee combat with magic and projectiles, I believe, also, and then you can like marry people, start a house, from what I recall, and so it did definitely give you some options. It just wasn't quite as open ended as they were really hyping it up to be at first. But it was still a decent game though, and it was pretty beloved by a lot of people. And and then also that you can choose if you want to be a good or bad person, right? And then if you, depending on what you choose, like for example, if you start aligning with evil choices, your character starts changing where or he or she ends up growing like horns. Because actually, I don't quite recall. No, actually, I don't think you can pick your gender. I think it's just I forgot. Yeah. There's another game too where I beat it back in the day and all, but I've forgotten so much about it. But I do know that regardless your main character, if you start going, picking evil choices, you start growing horns and your face starts changing a bit. So I thought that was pretty cool back then. Oh, excuse me. But pretty cool though, action RPG. And so even though it didn't deliver on all its promises, it's still not bad though. It's not a bad game, and it's not too incredibly long either, from what I recall too. So. But another RPG though that came out on the Xbox, at least on consoles, it was exclusive at this time, and that was Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic 2. So, the previous series, Knights of the Old Republic, amazing game, right? I gushed about that game last episode. Amazing game. This one is kind of more of the same, only this one was developed by Obsidian Entertainment, where the first one was by BioWare. But they pretty much kept the same sort of style and gameplay and all, just with its own unique story that takes place. Oh, I don't know. I forgot how many years, but it takes place after the events of part one. And I really enjoyed this game. It wasn't quite as good as the first one, but I really liked the more darker tone to this one. I felt that was pretty cool. I did feel like certain areas from again another game I beat back in the day. I don't recall a whole lot of now, but I do recall like there's some areas that were a bit too stretched out. Like the first intro of the game, like when you first start off, it's pretty cool, like the events that are happening, the story and all. But I just felt like it kind of dragged out a little bit too long, right, until you get into the more meat of the game. But still kind of the same though, right? Where you become a Jedi. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that, right? Not to spoil the story. But you can choose, between good and evil. Only now, depending on what you choose, your party members follow along with you, right? So if you decide to become a good person, all your party members start going towards the light. Where if you become an asshole, then all your party members start becoming, towards the dark side. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, I remember I really liked the game. I think the game gets criticized a bit because it felt like it was a bit unfinished, but I remember I really liked the ending and the dialogue at the end and all. There was one character specifically that I really enjoyed. Her name is Kreia, I believe, and I really enjoyed her character. She's one of my more favorite of just like the whole Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic series. Um, but all the cast of characters are really well done, and yeah, just a great game. Again, not quite as good as the first one, but definitely worth playing. And I know you can get this one on the Switch, and I'm sure on PC and all. But yeah, definitely worth checking out. Though I did enjoy this one. This and well, the first one to me are probably some of the better Star Wars stories that I've experienced. But then another game that I really enjoyed though too was Ninja Gaiden. And so this is a sort of a reboot of the series that was done. The creator of this game, oh god, I forgot his name, but he recently passed though. But he definitely left us with this hell of an action game though. And for me personally, when it comes to like the mechanics of the game, like how precise are your strikes, how good is the combat. This is probably one of my favorite games of all time when it comes to that right there. There might be action games that I like overall more, but I just felt, excuse me, the controls to this one were really well done, and the level layouts were really done. Were done really well, and yeah, just the moves that you can pull off on this are really cool as you gain new weapons as well too. And Hayabusa, he's just definitely one of the funnest characters to control in a 3D game, 3D action game. The camera can be a bit off, but otherwise for the most part it works okay. But just the action combat overall, it's definitely some of the best in a video game, and has a bit of Metroidvania elements to it, and the bosses are really incredible too. But a very difficult game, though. I mean, this game is very hard, and this was actually one of my pride and joys of a very difficult game that I can say that I did beat back in the day, and I do recall this one quite a bit just because I really enjoyed it, and yeah, just one of my favorite action games of all time. It's truly incredible. And at one point, I think it was my favorite game of this year, but just in retrospect, as I think back on it, I just prefer the Snake Eater a little bit more. But at the time, yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it was an Xbox exclusive at the time, and so definitely made it worth owning the system for, in my opinion. If you didn't mind a really challenging 3D action game, just a very very awesome game. But the crowning jewel, though, for the Xbox, though, and for me also a really excellent game. It's one of my favorite first-person shooters, and I mean the game almost needs no introduction, but that's Halo 2. And this game was a mega hit for the Xbox as it sold really well. And I could be wrong, but I think it did break a few records though, sales wise. I don't know. I could be wrong. Because I mean, I know we had Grand Theft Auto San Andreas too this year, but it sold really well. It was really popular. People were lining up to play this game, and it's just a really great first person shooter that continues more from what the first one was doing, only now because Xbox Live had started. So it had already been out for about a year, but this game really gave it a bump up, though, I'm sure, in subscribers and all to Xbox Live. As I personally, I'll start saying this now if I haven't already, but going forward, because online gaming started becoming more of a thing, and so I know that there's a lot of people that have a lot of fond memories with playing games online and all. I have very limited experience with that, as there was a few games that I would play online, and there was a stretch there where I did play online games with my brother and a few buddies, but nothing too much though. So I don't have a whole lot of experience with that there. But I do know that Xbox Live was a big thing, and Halo 2 was like the main king game for when it came to that there. As I mean, that's where the game really took off, was just how much fun people were having in the multiplayer on this game. But speaking aside from that, though, the single player campaign was pretty excellent too, and I had a lot of fun with it. I mean, there's a lot of cool, epic moments in it, and just a great first person shooting action. The AI, I feel, of Halo games are some of the best out there, at least at the time. Now you can dual wield weapons, and some of the set pieces that you go through in this game are truly outstanding. And my favorite, personally, Halo game. And yeah, I mean, I get the hype on this game. I was really into it. Again, first person, or I'm sorry, single player mode, anyways. And definitely worth. I mean, Halo 2 needs no introduction, right? And all. If you have any interest in the Xbox, you've already played this game more than likely, and just an excellent game. And so now, I mean, really, the only way you can play this game, you know, that's available by retail is the one on the Master Chief Collection, which is actually a really good remaster of the game, though I feel. But yeah, just an excellent game. Had really cool, great graphics, great sound, an incredible soundtrack still, and just a hell of a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, Halo 2 this year had a lot of great first person shooters, and Halo 2 was one of them, right? That was just really on top there, but just truly incredible. But then we'll jump over to PC a bit. And so, like I said before, I can only provide so much information on PC, but I know that there were some games that came out that were really, uh, just really important to just the video game industry overall. And speaking of first person shooters, so we did get Far Cry this year. So the start of this series, it became really popular afterwards. This is first on the PC, and so this game, there's a bit of stealth involved in this game as you're out in the jungle, and try to take out the enemy. And so it's not just going in guns blazing, but try to strategize, how you're going to approach your objectives and all. And pretty cool game from what I understand. I didn't play this version on the PC, obviously, but they ported it over to the Xbox, I believe, or on the 360. I know there was a version that I played on console, and in that version there, it was pretty cool. So, but it got its start though on the PC though, and yeah, it seemed like to be a pretty popular game. But two games though that were really popular at the time and really were changing things up as far as gameplay, first-person shooters, to an extent, storytelling, graphics especially, and that was Half-Life 2 and Doom 3. Now, again, I wasn't a PC player back then, but at this time, so like the video game E3 shows, they were starting to be shown like on TV online, and I remember seeing the trailers to these games back then, and I was really impressed with what the graphics were going to be doing, and it was truly something else to see. And so for Doom 3, what was revolutionary about this game in terms of graphics was the shadow and the lighting, where the game is very dark, right? You're in this really dark corridors a lot, and you have all your demented, creatures out there, right? As hell takes over basically in space. But the shadow usage and the lighting and all was very atmospheric and made things creepy and look really impressive. And then the textures that they were using on the character models look a step above from what was already being done, where it started making like the basically like the surfaces of of the world around you and the skin textures and all. It started giving it a bit more of a realistic look to it. I mean, when you go back and play Doom 3, for example, yeah, I mean, again, obviously it doesn't compare to what's being done now, but at the time it looked like it was taking another step up, right, on giving everything more of a realistic look, especially like the backgrounds, like all the metallic walls and the floors and all the intricate little details of just everything that going on in the background in the space station looked more real. And then you couple that with the incredible lighting and all, and it was truly an outstanding game to look at. And the demon creatures and all just look really impressive. And we were starting to enter into the next generation, right? And so this game really started showing what next generation technology could bring as far as like shadow, lighting, texture quality, and well, I don't know the technical terms actually of a lot of that stuff. I just know that things were starting to look a lot better, and this was definitely a showpiece for the PC. The game itself, I've played this. I never played it on the PC back then, but I've played it, afterwards on because the Xbox actually got a really great port of it for what it could do the following year, and then I've played it now more on modern systems now, and I really like Doom 3. I enjoy it. It's a bit different than the other ones where it's not just all balls out action, right? This one is more a little bit kind of like an immersive sim, and it's the fights are more it's more smaller scale, but also that amps up the tension, though. And still a great game. And I really enjoy Doom 3. It's, I don't know, maybe this is sacrilege to say, but this is coming from someone that's not a hardcore Doom fan, but I think it's my favorite one, actually, of all the Doom games. But I know at the time, though, it was really popular and really groundbreaking for its graphics. But Half-Life 2, on the other end, though, so great graphics as far as like the texture quality, I would assume the frame rate at the time and all. But what really made this game stand out that was also showing like what next gen technology could bring is the physics in the game. And so what I mean by that is just how a lot of things can be interacted with, right? Like you can pick up a barrel or destructive environments and things like that. So at the start of the game, there's a section where one of the bad guys he's standing next to a trash can and he knocks over a can that was on top of it. And he's like, oh, pick it up and throw it in the trash. So you pick up the can and then throw it in the trash can. And just the physics of that alone right there, right? And all was kind of impressive. And I think they did that little scene to kind of show off their physics engine. But where you really start getting a taste of what it can do is later on in the game, you get this, it's called the gravity gun. And so what it does is that it can suck things into it with one button, and then at the press of another button, it'll shoot it out like a projectile. So when you get to this one section in the game, I think it's called Ravenholm or something like that. That's where you can really show. It really shows off what this game can do as far as its physics. So, for example, you can there's like a bunch of these saw blades lying around, so you can suck one into your gravity gun and then shoot it out at the enemy, right? And then watching their bodies like animate accordingly, right, depending on where you hit them. All that was really impressive. And again, it was just kind of showing, right, it just felt the world feel more real, when the physics of the game were just that impressive. And even to this day, some games haven't even been able to do as good as like what this game was doing back then. And so it was really impressive for that on a technologically anyways. The game itself is really fun. It's cool. It's continues on from the story of the first one, where you're, Gordon Freeman, and now you're. I've gone a ways into the game, but I didn't beat it. But you're trying to basically stop this alien invasion, right? I guess more or less, right? But as you're going through the game, it's pretty seamless. Where it just kind of keeps going and going and going. It's. I mean, there's load times right in between certain sections, but the story kind of it's played in real time, and so it doesn't stop for like cutscenes and all, right? Everything is being portrayed to you in real time, and I think that was one of the revolutionary things about the game back then. And it was I mean, it was just the Half-Life games have a huge following, and I really enjoyed the first one and especially the second one. I think they're great games, but I guess I don't know. I'm missing something as to why these games are so highly revered, though. As again, I like first person shooters, but I'm not like the biggest fan of them, and so maybe I'm missing something there. But the times that I have played, Half-Life 2, I definitely am impressed by it, and I could only imagine back then, had I really gotten into it back then, I would have been really impressed with it. But I didn't play Half-Life 2 until later. And, by then we had a lot of stuff that was just, I guess you could say, almost more impressive than it. But the game still definitely stands on its own as far as if we're talking about the gameplay, the story, the physics still, again, are really impressive, and your weapon selection and all. And, yeah, I mean, it was a massive game during this stretch here. And I can see why. I mean, like I said, it was. I remember looking at the trailers back then and thinking, like, "Wow, this is the future, right?" And so again, I'm saying this again, where I'm looking toward the next generation. Like, what is the next generation going to bring? With physics like this and all, it looks incredible. But definitely gave us a test or a taste of what was to come. But another game too that came out this year that was huge was World of Warcraft. Again, I can't speak on it too much. I just know that it was really popular for like online gaming back in the day. That to this day, it still seems to be pretty popular. So basically, it's an MMORPG, which massively multiplayer online RPG. I think that's what that stands for. Where you create an avatar, you're in this world, and there's just a bunch of other people you can play with, and not only that, but communicate with and all. I mean, I know that games like EverQuest, World of Warcraft, later on Final Fantasy 14 and all created these huge communities of online gamers, and not only were they played the game and all with each other, but then also, I mean, there's been a lot of like long lasting relationships that have been formed from that, from everything from people getting married, to things like that. And so this was, this had already been done before. I just know that World of Warcraft was humongous as far as, these kind of RPGs go. I mean, so much so that I was actually talking to a work buddy just a few days ago, and he was telling me how he and I guess some other friends were, they spent some time playing World of Warcraft on some kind of a new expansion that came out. And so just to see the lasting testament of this game, right? Even to this day, people are still playing it and talking about it. And apparently there's like new updates going on about it. Again, I'm not too much of an expert on World of Warcraft to provide further detail. Other than that, I just know that it was a huge deal and definitely one of the more pivotal games that came out in this year, in this generation, and really continued to evolve the landscape of video gaming as a whole. And so for that there, definitely wanted to give it a shout out for just, again, right, for everything that it did for video games. So there's that. Some other games really quick here, as I'm just kind of going through a list here, is there was Beautiful Joe 2 that came out. So that came out on the GameCube and also on the PlayStation 2 now, because eventually the PlayStation 2 also got the first Beautiful Joe game. There was also Outrun 2 that came out on the Xbox, which was a lot like the first Outrun game, just, improved graphics, obviously. And but other than that, kind of more or less the same, which was excellent, actually. And I really enjoyed that Outrun game. Let's see. But then there was also Forgotten Realms, Demon's Stone, which this was from the same developers as at least one of the Lord of the Rings hack and slash games that from the previous years. Only now we're using the the Dungeons and Dragons license now. But that was, pretty cool for that. Let's see. EverQuest 2 apparently too also came out this year. Let's see. There was Dead or Alive Ultimate on the Xbox, which was Dead or Alive 2, but only basically remastered. Neo Contra for the PlayStation 2, which was a Contra game, only it's kind of more in a, I don't know, kind of, it has more of a top-down perspective, but still pretty cool though, from what I recall. Let's see. All right, but I think that kind of gives you a good overall view. Oh, Gradius 5 on the PlayStation 2. So that was a 2D shooter and developed by Treasure, I believe, and very difficult, but still a quality shooter though. I do remember that. And yeah, so like I said, right, I'm sure a lot of other games that I'm missing here, but overall, a great year for what was available for the consoles that were out at the time. But did want to touch base a bit here though on, well, like I mentioned earlier, the technically the first game that started coming out for the seventh generation. But that was a portable little system though, the Nintendo DS. So what I understand of the DS is that it was originally going to be sort of like a spin-off, I guess you can say, from the Game Boy Advance, where it was like an alternative way to play portable games, but then it ended up really taking off though. And I feel like one of the reasons that it really took off was because it was touchscreen. It catered a lot to like a casual audience, and this was before like smartphones were a thing. And I mean, the Nintendo DS to this day, well, I mean, as of what's been officially released, because I'm pretty sure the Switch has now beaten it. But what's been officially released, at least what I understand right now, it's the second highest selling system, which sold at about 154 million, right below the Sony PlayStation 2's 155 million, which was the numbers that Sony had put out for the PlayStation 2 for the longest time, until more recently they bumped it up to 160 million. But at the time, though, and again, as of right now, that's been officially announced, the DS is still the second highest selling system, to my understanding. But again, it's probably been overtaken by the Switch now. But I'm going to read a bit of information on this, as I owned the DS back in the day when it first came out, but I didn't really get too heavily invested in it. But the Nintendo DS is a foldable handheld game console produced by Nintendo, released worldwide between 2004 and 2005. The DS in the name is an initialism for dual screen, reflecting the system's most distinctive feature: two LCD screens working in tandem, with the lower screen functioning as a touchscreen. Both designs are housed in a clamshell similar to that of the Game Boy Advance SP and some models of the Game & Watch. The DS was among the first portable consoles to support wireless connectivity for local multiplayer over short distances, as well as online play through the now defunct Nintendo Wi-Fi connection service. Its primary competitor during the seventh generation of the video game consoles was Sony's PlayStation Portable, which we'll talk more about that next year. But initially marketed as a experimental third pillar in Nintendo's console lineup, complementing the handheld Game Boy Advance family and the home console GameCube, the DS backwards compatibility with the Game Boy Advance titles and strong sales led it to be widely regarded as the successor to the Game Boy line. On March 2nd, 2006, Nintendo released a refreshed model of the Nintendo DS Lite that was slimmer, lighter, and brighter screen and improved battery life. Okay, that's getting more into future stuff, but excuse me. So development of the Nintendo DS began around mid-2002 as company president Hiroshi Yamauchi stepped down and assumed an advisory role. At the time, he proposed Nintendo Explorer, a system built around two screens. Satoru Iwata succeeded Yamauchi as president in May 2002. He acknowledged that Nintendo had fallen behind industry trends, particularly online gaming, and sought to broaden the company's audience beyond traditional gamers. Internal research suggested that Nintendo's past emphasis on unconventional hardware had complicated third-party development and weakened its competitiveness. Iwata therefore supported development of a dual-screen handheld that would offer distinctive new ways to play, be more accessible to non-traditional audiences, and easier for developers to support. Because Nintendo believed consumers were unlikely to pay recurring fees for online services, the design emphasized wireless functionality to enable local multiplayer and new interactive experiences without subscriptions. On January 20th, 2004, Nintendo announced it would release the new dual-screen game device under the codename Nintendo DS, describing it as an experimental third pillar alongside Game Boy Advance and GameCube, rather than a replacement for either. Few technical details were disclosed other than it would feature two 3-inch LCD displays, dual processors, and up to 128 megabytes of memory. In March 2004, a leaked document revealed additional technical specifications, including that one of the screens would be touch sensitive and identified the internal development name Nitro. The prototype was shown publicly in May at E3 2004 in Los Angeles, where Nintendo of America President Regis Fils-Aimé, I kind of always pronounce his last name wrong, noted that the design would take change before launch. Oh, excuse me. Let's see. But basically, it came out on. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff here, but basically, it came out on September 20th of 2004, and Nintendo announced that the DS would launch in North America on November 21st, 2004, at $149 American value. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, the system ended up really taking off, and I mean, it became really popular. Initially, some of the game lineups wasn't too impressive. I mean, there was a Super Mario 64 remake of sorts. And there was also, let's see, I think there was like a Ridge Racer game. But okay, here we go. So here's like a list of some of the launch games. And again, this is for North America. But we had like a racing game, Asphalt Urban GT, Field of Magic, Madden, Metroid Prime Hunters, First Hunt, Spider-Man 2, Super Mario 64 DS, and the Herb Sims in the City. So yeah, so I remember I got the Mario 64 game, and I think I when I got the DS, I got a few games for it, and eventually I got like the Castlevania games and a few other handful of games. But I didn't really get into the DS that much, though, going forward, right? So I missed out on a lot of the library of that system there, and it's only been more recently that I've been getting into the DS games because it was kind of the same thing with the Game Boy Advance. I bought it for just a very small handful of games, and then I just kind of like, man, whatever. Because again, at the time, I just wasn't really into handheld gaming. But yeah, the system just took off though, and sold incredibly well. And I think a lot of it had to do because, like, well, I was just reading earlier there is that they were trying to tap into the casual market, and so this is the start of it, right? With Nintendo trying to, take over that section there of gamers because the GameCube, I mean, the Game Boy Advance did pretty good. It did okay. But the GameCube, it didn't really do that well for Nintendo. And so they were probably looking around, right? Like said, okay, we got Sony and Microsoft there we're competing against. And not only are they doing video games, but they're also big companies too, where Sony does electronics and Microsoft is involved in pretty much all things computer. And so how do you compete against that, right? Where they could take a bit of a hit as far as like their video game sales goes, but Nintendo really couldn't though that much because their main thing is video games. And so they really started trying to go in a different direction. And so this is the start of it here with the Nintendo DS and then eventually the next system, but for their main home consoles. But me personally, like I said, I do want to go. I have been exploring the Nintendo DS library more, and there has been some good stuff on there. At the time, I just, like I said, I remember, like I said, I bought the DS, and I was like, I played Mario 64 for a bit, and I was like, cool, whatever. But that was about it, and then it just kind of gathered dust for a while. I don't even know what I did. I'm pretty sure I sold it at some point down the road, but yeah, I'd be curious to check out more of the library of the games now. As I've been able to mod because I bought a used Nintendo DS Lite and I've been able to mod it, so I have a bunch of games on there now that I can check out and explore. And so maybe I'll try to do that at some point and just dedicate like a day, maybe just going through the library of the game. Excuse me, of the games there. But yeah, like I said, eventually the system really took off, and it did kind of start the seventh generation too, even though it was in the handheld, right? But we'll get more into the whole seventh generation thing next year. And so I'll leave it off on that there as, again, just to kind of recap really quick. So 2004, an amazing year. Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater was my favorite game, but we had a lot of other great games too also, right? Like Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, Halo 2, Half-Life 2, Doom 3, World of Warcraft, so many great games. And was really a standout year that was not my favorite year, but there was just so much good quality stuff though that it was just a hard year to ignore. to not consider it one of the best years in gaming of all time. And it was the last year for the sixth generation where it would be the main generation, right, of consoles. As next year we start getting introduced even further to the 2005 with a new entry into the seventh generation. And so things really started going in a different direction as far as what video games would become for the next several years. And it was still a really exciting time as things were changing up a bit from what we were used to. Gaming was becoming even more mainstream. We were starting to see more of a push from like Western developers as far as like the games that they would be bringing out. And so the gaming landscape was definitely changing, but definitely a lot of good stuff though too, for sure. And we will get into that more next year in 2005. Until then, have a great one.